I was the bullied loser at Ridgeview High, the kid everyone treated like a free punching bag. Then the black pills keeping my demon power asleep ran out, and I awakened as the demon prince. After that, the same people who laughed at me started fearing me, respecting me, and stepping out of my way. That afternoon, 30 students filmed us behind Ridgeview High. Brock Dempsey had filmed my beatings for months. He crushed my medicine, he punished anyone who helped, then he offered one free punch. His rule, one hit, then he broke me for the crowd. I swung. Teeth spun through the air. Brock flew over the front row and hit the ground. Every laugh died. One follower lowered his phone. Serena Maddox, the blonde classmate at the fence, barely blinked. The bald tyrant had used my face for content. Now half his teeth were in the dirt. The whole yard became afraid of me. The medicine had failed, and the weak boy everyone knew was gone. The pills were gone. My grandmother was missing. Something inhuman had started hunting me at home. To understand that punch, go back a little over 3 weeks with me. It started at Ridgeview High, when Brock kicked my black pills across the cafeteria floor. Back then, Brock's crew filmed me almost every day. Their favorite game was making me carry their bags while they called me an obedient pet. On bad days, Brock made me kneel so his followers could frame the video better. He hated me, because girls noticed my face before they noticed his expensive sneakers. Look, there was no grand reason. Girls looked at me first, Brock saw it, and he hit me harder. He punished other people until they learned to leave me alone. A student who loaned me a pencil found his backpack dumped in a toilet. A girl who told him to stop spent a week eating lunch alone. The school rule was simple. Anyone who stood beside me became Brock's next target. Students stopped sitting near me. People looked away when his followers shoved me. Even teachers walked off whenever Brock raised his voice. That morning, I reached for the black pill my grandmother made me take daily. She'd always given me the same warning. One pill every morning. Miss it, and I could spike a fever or blackout. Brock slapped the bottle from my hand. Black pills bounced under tables. His blonde follower planted a shoe on my chest while the other one filmed. Brock crouched beside me and used my last name for the camera. "What are these, Avery? Pills to make something finally grow?" The cafeteria laughed because Brock expected it. Then he picked up one pill, crushed it under his heel, and told his follower to use me as a punching target. The first hit folded me over a table. The second put a copper taste in my mouth. Brock leaned close. "Smile for the camera. People like you more when you're useful." A lunch tray slammed between us. Serena Maddox had blocked the aisle. She was a blonde classmate with sharp blue eyes, and yes, I forgot the pain for one stupid second. I had just been hit twice. Let me live. Serena looked at Brock first. "Move!" Brock tried a smile he had probably practiced in a mirror. "We're joking around." Serena nudged his shoe off my bottle. "Your jokes need better material." His followers moved because she had said it like an order. Then Serena picked up the least damaged pill. Its black coating had split across the middle. Her expression changed for half a second. She turned it between 2 fingers and asked me, "Where did you get this?" "My grandmother." Serena handed it back. "I've seen this coating before. Don't lose the bottle." That was all she gave me. She gave the medicine one hard look and gave me another. Then she walked away before Brock said anything else. Brock watched her look at me, his jaw tightened. I swallowed what remained of the pill. Most of its black powder was already smeared across the cafeteria tile. Later that morning, students crowded around a phone showing a blurry creature climbing a building downtown. Most called it fake. I stayed quiet. Brock was enough trouble for one morning. By evening, I was back in our apartment hiding bruises under a clean shirt. My grandmother was the only person who had never looked away. She took one look at me and pulled the shirt straight. A muddy shoe print covered the back. She tapped it with one finger. "Cameron, are you a person or a floor rag?" "A person with bad balance. Apparently the floor won." Her voice stayed flat, but her hands shook while she checked my ribs. I hated that part. I could take Brock's punches. Watching her blame herself hurt worse, so I lied. I told her gym class had gotten rough. She stared until I looked away. Then she pushed the pill bottle toward me. "Take tomorrow's dose early. The missed dose may hit before the new one works." That night, while I showered, someone knocked on our door. I only learned what happened outside from the memory fragments my grandmother forced into me later. A man in a postal jacket stood in the hallway holding an empty scanner. My grandmother kept the chain on. "Where's the package?" The man's smile stretched too far. "You have it!" His hand punched through the gap. She caught his wrist. Blood-red threads snapped from beneath her sleeve and wrapped around his arm. The fake postman pulled once. The threads tightened. He dropped the human face. Dark eyes opened across his skin, and hooked teeth pushed through his smile. My grandmother did not scream. She yanked him against the door, opened it, and dragged the creature inside before the neighbors could see. The demon called her an old woman. "Bad read." He tore free from the ceiling and swung a hand shaped like a butcher's hook. She stepped inside the swing. Several threads bound his elbow. Another caught his throat. She twisted 2 fingers. The demon hit the wall hard enough to crack a framed family photo. Then the red threads pinned him to the ceiling, cut through his limbs, and crushed whatever kept him moving. His body smoked, broke apart, and left black ash across our entryway. By the time I left the shower, my grandmother, Avery, had swept most of it beneath a rug. She hid a bleeding palm inside her sleeve. I hid my bruised ribs beneath my shirt. We ate noodles across from each other and lied with impressive teamwork. Every time I started recognizing a neighborhood, Irene found boxes. At the time, I thought we were unlucky. Later, I learned each move kept hunters from locking onto us, and I paid by never keeping friends. The next morning, the missed dose hit me in class. Halfway through class, heat rolled through my body. The teacher's voice stretched. The room tilted. I woke in the nurse's office with Serena standing outside the glass. She left before I could call her. Irene arrived soon after, already carrying packing tape. "We're moving tonight," she told me. I sat up. Again? Irene had moved me often enough that I learned to stop unpacking everything. Her jaw tightened. "Danger is close." It was the first honest sentence she had given me. I asked who was coming. Irene squeezed the packing tape until the cardboard tube bent. "Stay where I send you. That is how you help me." That afternoon, back at our apartment, Irene sent me on an errand away from the building. I learned later that missing the suppressor let my sealed power leak. The hunters already circling us used that trace to lock onto our building. Lobby footage showed why. An empty delivery truck rolled into our parking area. The real driver stepped behind it. Something dark dragged him beneath the rear doors. A minute later, he climbed out, moving wrong, and strangers followed in his company's uniforms. They carried no packages. The lobby cat smelled them first. It clawed the attendant's arm, shot under the desk, and refused to come back out. The fake crew took the elevator to our floor. I reached the lobby minutes later and saw the truck doors hanging open. Empty floor, empty shelves, no boxes. One delivery man stood by the elevator with ash on his cuff. He smiled at me. "Wrong building, kid." Then something crashed 12 floors above us. Irene had sent me away to keep me safe. I ran back. The elevator doors refused to open, so I took the stairs. 12 floors sounded manageable until my body started burning halfway up. I kept climbing. Another crash shook dust from the stairwell ceiling. By the 10th floor, I heard someone screaming about a key. By the 12th, our apartment door had split open. Through the gap, a red thread yanked one delivery demon across the kitchen. Irene snapped her hand, and it burst into ash. Then the strongest attacker tore through 2 threads and drove Irene across the room. I hit our door shoulder. First, it opened onto a ruined apartment. Several demons were already turning to ash. Another hung from the wall, bound in red threads. Irene stood between me and the strongest attacker with blood running down one arm. The tall demon wore a delivery uniform over plated black skin. One of his hands had become a blade. He pointed it at Irene. "Give me the key!" Irene tightened the threads around his throat. "You came without knowing what it looks like?" The demon lunged. Irene cut his cheek and drove him through the kitchen table. For 1 second I thought she had won. Then the creature behind the door grabbed me. A claw locked around my neck. The tall demon smiled at Irene. "Drop the threads." Irene froze. The creature holding me pressed harder. I drove my teeth into its wrist. That was my first real counter in years. It was ugly, desperate, and effective for 1 second. The demon roared and smashed me into the wall. Irene moved. The tall attacker crossed the room first. His blade flashed. Irene's left arm hit the floor. Every red thread went slack. I tried to stand. The demon behind me kicked my ribs and dragged me upright by the hair. Beside Irene, the tall one placed his blade beneath her chin. "The key!" Irene looked at me. Her eyes stayed on my face while blood ran down her side. She released the threads. The demon laughed, stepped forward, and drove the blade through her chest. Then he turned and drove the same weapon through mine. Cold metal entered under my ribs. The room lost its sound. Irene fell against me, and the attacker whispered, "The key dies with you." I still did not know what the key was. My grandmother was dying against me. Then Irene released everything she had left. Thousands of red threads erupted through the apartment. They punched through walls, wrapped the demons, and ripped the tall attacker away from us. The first thread closed around his throat. His smile disappeared. Then the whole strike team came apart in a storm of ash. Irene had won. We were still dying. My sight filled with images that belonged to her. A burning palace. A battlefield under a red sky. Irene running through smoke with a wrapped baby against her chest. Soldiers chasing her toward a wall of light. Then I saw myself as a small child, biting a larger boy who had shoved someone weaker. I did not know any names in those images. I only knew Irene had been running for me long before I saw the chase. She pressed her remaining hand against my chest. Red threads slipped beneath my skin. Something cold and enormous answered. "I hid this so you could live," Irene whispered. "Now you need it to survive." Dark chains I had never seen wrapped around my heart. Her threads snapped them one by one. Power flooded my body. The wound beneath my ribs closed around the blade. Blue-white heat moved through my blood, cold enough to burn. Irene pulled the weapon free. I caught her before she hit the floor. Grandma! Irene touched my face. Fight when you must. Protect who you choose. Her fingers turned gray. Whatever Irene was, her body turned to ash. She broke apart in my arms. She had been the only person who always stood between me and danger. Then the apartment disappeared. When I woke, my wound was gone. Irene was gone. Black ash covered the floor where she had been, but the blackout left the goodbye in fragments. I remembered holding her. I could not remember the final words, so I reported her missing because I was not ready to call her dead. The pill bottle was gone too. Whatever Irene had sealed inside me was awake, and I had no idea what it would do the next time somebody hit me. The next morning, in the ruined apartment, I called the police because that was what normal people did when their grandmother vanished. Irene's ash covered the floor. My chest had healed around a torn shirt. Half my memory was missing. Normal people had better luck. An hour later, at the city precinct, the desk officer listened until I mentioned creatures wearing delivery uniforms. Then he looked at my bruises, looked at the empty chair beside me, and asked whether I had taken anything. I told him about the daily black medicine. He slid a counseling card across the desk. Go home, kid. When I pointed at the tear where the blade had gone through my shirt, he pushed the card closer. The police filed Irene as missing and treated the monster story like a drug problem. So I searched without them. 3 weeks passed. I slept a few hours at a time. Every night, I searched the apartment and found ash in places I had already cleaned. Ridgeview High took me back before I had slept through one full night. On my first morning back, our coach blew the whistle for a sprint. I crossed the finish line while the fastest runner was still halfway down the track. The coach checked his stopwatch twice. Then he made us run again. I tried to slow down. I still reached the line first. The fastest runner stared at my shoes as if I had hidden an engine inside them. A boy near the bleachers stopped tying his shoe. Serena Maddox watched from the fence with her arms folded. When our eyes met, she looked at the empty space where my pill bottle used to hang from my bag. She had asked about my pills before Irene disappeared. Now she watched me run, then checked the empty loop on my bag again. After class, Serena blocked the hallway. You stopped taking them, she told me. The bottle disappeared. Her eyes moved to my hands. Any fever? Only when people ask suspicious questions. Serena's mouth almost smiled. Try staying on the ground today. That was an oddly specific warning, so naturally, I ignored it. At lunch, I slipped into an empty stairwell and found an open stairwell window. The rule I knew was simple. Losing the pills had changed my body. I needed to learn what it could survive before Brock hit me again. I dropped into the grass. My shoes struck first. The ground cracked beneath both heels. My knees barely bent. Serena stood above me at the open window. She closed her eyes for one exhausted second. You're terrible at following advice. Your advice lacked supporting evidence. It's got a crater now. She walked away before I could ask how she had predicted it. That evening, outside a small convenience store, an elderly woman lost control of a cart stacked with flattened cardboard. The boxes spilled across the sidewalk. For 1 second, the back of her gray head looked like Irene's. I was already kneeling beside her before I made the connection. 2 boys from Brock's crew came out of the store laughing. The red-haired follower demanded cigarettes from the woman. She refused because they had no identification. His blonde friend kicked the cardboard into the street. The old woman reached for it. He shoved her card over. Something hot moved under my skin. I stood between them and the woman. Pick it up! The red-haired follower stared. You talking to me? I pointed at the cardboard. Use both hands. You look like you need the practice. His friend laughed once. Then he remembered who had spoken. They dragged me into the alley because they wanted privacy for the beating. The blonde follower threw the first punch. I took it. The red-haired one tried a kick aimed at my ribs. I caught his ankle. For one strange second, all 3 of us looked at my hand. Then my fingers closed. Bone cracked under my palm. He dropped and screamed. His friend backed into a dumpster. I released the ankle and stared at what I had done. 3 weeks earlier, that kick would have put me on the pavement. Now his foot had broken in my hand. The blonde follower grabbed a loose bottle from the alley floor, then dropped it when I looked at him. I stepped past both boys, lifted the woman's cart upright with one hand, and pushed the cardboard out of the street. She thanked me. I could barely hear her over the cracking sound still replaying in my head. Then I ran. The next morning, the red-haired follower entered class wearing a medical boot. He hid behind a textbook when I looked over. The book was upside down. Man, he was so scared he had not noticed the book was upside down. Brock noticed the boot. What happened? The follower kept his eyes on the inverted page. Stairs! Brock glanced at me. His blonde follower walked over before the bald tyrant could get brave in person. He planted both hands on my desk. You think one lucky move changes anything? I looked up. Cold pressure leaked from my eyes. The follower opened his mouth, then closed it. His hands slid off my desk. He stepped backward, bumped the chair, and left the room without finishing the threat. The class watched him go. Nobody laughed. That afternoon, I went to an abandoned construction site and found a steel support beam lying across the concrete. I checked the stairwell twice. I wanted proof without an audience. First, I punched the beam. My fist left the dent. Then I hooked one hand beneath it and lifted. The steel rose. A beam that should have required machinery balanced across my palm. Dark lines spread from my wrist toward my elbow. My reflection in a dusty window showed eyes with a blue glow around the pupils. I dropped the beam. It hit concrete hard enough to shake the floor. There. Proof. I dropped the beam before I learned what else I could break. The next day at lunch, Brock sat at the center table with his followers around him. He had bought enough fried chicken for an entire team and saved the chair beside him for Serena. Apparently, Greece was his romance strategy. Serena entered in the school uniform, and I stared for one stupid second. She caught me. I looked at my lunch. Then she walked past Brock. The whole table went quiet. Serena stopped beside me. "Is this seat taken?" "It is now." She sat. Brock's smile tightened. "Serena, I saved you a place." Serena looked at the chicken, then at him. "Did you save any courage?" His followers stared at their trays. Brock stood. "I'm not scared of him." Serena leaned closer to me. "He keeps sending other people. That usually means fear." Brock heard every word. His face went red enough to match the ketchup bottles. He announced a fight behind the back gate at 6. By the final bell, every student phone in Ridgeview High showed the challenge. Serena found me near the lockers. "Brock is waiting behind the gate," she warned. "He brought an audience." I asked, "You sound concerned?" Serena folded her arms. "I dislike predictable disasters." I nodded toward the back gate. "Which one of us is the disaster?" Serena looked at my hands. "That's what I'm trying to find out." At 6, 30 students formed a rough circle behind the school. Phones were up. Students were passing cash. Brock's followers had told everyone I would leave in an ambulance. One student replayed an old clip of Brock making me carry his backpack. Another asked whether Serena would watch me get dropped. Brock heard him. He pulled off his jacket and stepped into the circle before anyone could laugh again. His taped fists were ready. His swollen mouth was grinning. He raised one hand. "I'll give Cameron the first punch." The crowd laughed. Brock tapped his cheek. "One free shot!" "Then I break him." "You already knew the rule. Now you knew why the whole school wanted him to regret it." I asked. "Anywhere." Brock spread his arms. "Anywhere." Serena stood near the fence. She watched my shoulders instead of his face. I walked forward. Brock whispered, "Try to make it look real." I hit him in the mouth. Teeth spun across the dirt. His feet left the ground. Brock cleared the first row, struck the grass, and rolled until a backpack stopped him. Every phone stayed raised. Every laugh stopped. A student who had bet against me quietly folded the money back into his pocket. The red-haired follower dropped his phone and grabbed the wrong leg. Brock's blonde follower moved away from the body before anyone told him to. Serena's eyes narrowed and her arms came loose from the fence. I walked to Brock. He blinked at the grass, then tried to push himself up. "Get up!" I told him. Brock tried. His arms folded under him. He raised one shaking hand. "Wait! I'm done!" The crowd heard him beg before I stepped back. The discount king had offered one free punch. Now his teeth were in the dirt, his followers had backed away, and 30 phones had recorded him begging. He asked for a lesson. He got the express version. Students helped Brock only after checking whether I objected. The crowd opened a path when I walked toward the gate. A few students nodded. Nobody laughed. The student holding my old humiliation clip deleted it before I reached him. I had wanted him afraid. I had not expected to scare myself. Eddie Palmer found me near the street afterward. Eddie was my only real friend, the one person who still returned my messages after every school transfer. He held out the backpack I had left near the fight. "You forgot this." "Thanks." Eddie studied my face. "You also forgot how to act like yourself." I took the bag. Maybe myself needed work. Maybe. Eddie's grip stayed on the strap. "Just don't turn into him." I stopped walking. Eddie was right enough to hurt. That night, I returned to the apartment because Irene's things were still there. Rain had started. The front door stood open. A shape clung to the ceiling above the living room. It dropped before I reached the light. The demon hit me with both feet. I caught its legs, swung it through the coffee table, and drove it into the wall. It stared at me with black eyes. "The seal is gone!" I grabbed its throat. "Where is Irene?" The demon slashed my arm and jumped through the window. I followed. We crossed the fire escape, hit the alley, and ran into the rain. It was fast. I was faster. The demon reached the street and glanced back once. I saw exactly where to throw. I grabbed Irene's old umbrella from the stand beside the lobby door. The demon leaped toward the opposite wall. I threw. The umbrella crossed the alley and punched through its shoulder, pinning it to brick. The cheap metal handle kept spinning. Irene had bought that umbrella during one of our moves. It had finally found a stable home. The demon clawed at the shaft. I landed in front of it. "Start talking." Its smile returned through the pain. Irene Avery was a guard general. My hand tightened around the handle. Irene had spent years clipping coupons, checking my homework, and pretending she couldn't open pickle jars. I asked, guarding what? The demon's smile twitched. The key. I tightened my grip. What key? The demon looked at my eyes and stopped smiling. The old orders named Irene as its guardian. She died protecting you. Cold lines spread over the bricks. The creature stared at my hand. You don't know what you are? Enlighten me. It leaned close enough for me to smell smoke. Demon! Then it ripped itself free, left part of its shoulder pinned beneath the umbrella, and vanished across the roofs. I chased across the roofs until the marks on my arm flared. A shop window caught my reflection. Blue light filled my eyes. Dark patterns covered my neck. The words stayed in my head on the way home. Demon. The scout escaped with Irene's name, my face, and proof that the seal was gone. By sunrise, it was carrying that report to the demon general who commanded the next hunt. Later, I learned the scout that escaped me reached the demon realm before sunrise. That was the world those apartment creatures came from. The scout crawled into a black stone hall with Irene's name, my face, and one useful fact. The seal on me had broken. Lucian Crowell, a general serving the ruler of that realm, listened without changing expression. The scout begged for another chance. Lucian killed it before the sentence ended. King Varric sat on a stolen demon throne behind him. He heard that Irene was dead and that a powerful boy had survived her. The scout also described blue frost gathering around my eyes. Varric's court went quiet. The demon realm had survived a civil war. Varric had taken the old king's throne, and loyalists had scattered into hiding. One court officer lowered his eyes too late. Varric saw it. Then he ordered soldiers to find the old king's descendant. I learned those names much later. That morning, Irene's police file was still my only lead, so I went back to the city precinct and demanded to see it. One old image showed Irene leaving a narrow medicine shop with my black pill bottle in hand. That picture gave me an address. An hour later, I stepped through the shop door. A man behind the counter looked at my face, dropped a box of tea, and ran through the back. Very normal pharmacist behavior. His name was Orson Webb. He sold herbal medicine in public and bolted the second Irene's grandson appeared. He ran. I chased him through a market, across moving buses, and onto a warehouse roof. Orson jumped the first alley. I cleared it without touching the gap. He glanced back, swore, and accelerated. He used the cane to vault a produce truck, kicked off a traffic light, and landed on a fire escape. I followed every move without losing ground. The cranky shopkeeper was fast enough to make me work for the answer. He reached the warehouse roof, found the next jump too wide, and turned with a metal cane in both hands. Stay back, Orson warned. I stopped just outside cane range. You supplied Irene's pills. His cane dipped. I had my answer. I grabbed the front of his coat. What were they? Orson looked at the marks creeping over my wrist. Suppressors! The pills kept demon power asleep. Missing doses let strength, speed, and marks leak through. That explained the broken foot, the steel beam, and the marks on my skin. I pushed Orson against the wall. What was Irene? A guard general under the old demon king. The shopkeeper watched my face carefully. King Varric overthrew that royal family. Irene escaped the slaughter and hid on Earth. I supplied those doses for years, Orson told me. They kept her household quiet enough to avoid demon trackers. Her household? Orson studied the marks again. Irene carried something valuable through the passage between worlds. What did she carry? Orson's jaw locked. Something the new king wanted. The key? His eyes sharpened. Where did you hear that? I tightened my grip. Orson struck my wrist with the cane and slipped free. He could have kept running. Instead, he looked at the dark marks on my arm and went pale. If Irene turned to ash, he told me, she died using everything she had. I stopped pretending Irene might still walk through our door. Varric's hunters had killed her on our floor. I picked up the cane and handed it back. Orson took it slowly. I told him, everyone involved is going to pay. Orson's face tightened. Varric makes Brock look harmless. I know. Orson shook his head. You know his name, that is all. He was right. I still walked away with the same answer. Later, I learned Varric sent more soldiers before I even left Orson's roof. He ordered them to follow the power leaking from me. The stolen crowned king had sent an army after a high school student. Honestly, that should have embarrassed him. On my first day back after Brock's fall, Ridgeview High acted like we had all been close friends for years. A student who used to change hallways waved at me. Another held a door open with both hands. One former target moved his bag and offered me the seat beside him. When Brock's blonde follower looked over, the boy kept the seat open. That was new. Brock's followers watched that happen and stayed seated. Look, one punch got me more greetings than years of being decent. Teenagers, man. Eddie Palmer met me near my locker. My only friend took one look at the crowd and grinned. Fear changed sides. I noticed. Eddie lowered his voice. Brock missed the update. Serena Maddox appeared beside us before I could answer. She had tied her blonde hair higher that day. I watched it for one irresponsible second. Serena caught me looking. Are you busy after school? Eddie grinned and took one step away from me. Traitor! I told Serena. Depends. Is this another warning I will ignore? It can be a conversation if you behave. Then it's definitely a warning. Serena pointed at me. After class, don't disappear. She walked away. Eddie watched her go. Fear changed sides. Serena wants you alone after school. From what Eddie admitted in the nurse's office later, this was what happened behind the gym that same afternoon. Brock had watched Serena leave my locker. Then he cornered Eddie and demanded my location. Eddie refused. Brock shoved him into the wall. Call Cameron, Brock ordered. Eddie glanced at the gap my punch had left in Brock's smile. Then Eddie wiped his lip. Call him yourself. You still have some teeth. Then Eddie punched Brock in the mouth. The hit barely moved Brock. Eddie stayed on his feet and raised both hands again. Brock's followers beat him until he dropped, then delivered the message. I was expected behind the abandoned maintenance shed after lunch. A few minutes after the beating, Eddie found me near the main hall. He kept one arm tight against his ribs and tried to hide the blood on his collar. Brock wants you behind the shed, Eddie told me. What did he do? Eddie shrugged badly. Nothing I can't handle. His knees shook. I texted Serena that our meeting had to wait. She replied before I lowered the phone. Serena wrote, try leaving one wall standing. I sent back, no promises. Then I took Eddie to the nurse and walked toward the shed. Inside the abandoned maintenance shed, Brock's whole crew waited for me. One boy locked the door behind me. Brock stood in the center with a metal pipe and a swollen mouth. You embarrassed me. You handled most of that yourself. He swung. I stepped aside. The pipe hit his own follower's shoulder. Brock stared at the mistake. I took the weapon, bent it across my knee, and dropped it at his feet. His crew rushed together. I stepped into the middle. I ducked the first punch and drove my shoulder into one chest. Then I swept another boy's legs and sent a third into a stack of broken chairs. The red-haired follower saw me coming and sat down voluntarily. Smartest decision anyone made in that shed. Brock attacked from behind. I caught his wrist, twisted him to the floor, and planted one shoe beside his face. Stay here, I told the crew. You're safer inside. A scream cut across the campus. Then another. The shed windows shattered inward. A creature with black claws dragged a teacher past the opening. The fight stopped mattering. Demons were pouring through Ridgeview High. Students ran between classrooms while dark shapes climbed the walls and broke through doors. A teacher pulled students toward a stairwell. A demon reached her first and threw her through the glass. Another creature hissed, "Find the key! Follow the scent!" I hit the first demon before it could follow. It skidded across the hallway, then lifted its head and turned straight toward me. 3 more monsters ignored the fleeing students and turned toward me. My unsuppressed power had a scent. They were following it, so I pulled the fire alarm. The bell screamed through the school. Sprinklers burst overhead. Students poured toward the marked exits. I climbed onto a hallway railing and shouted, "Use the exits! Stay away from me!" The nearest monsters changed direction. Good! I ran the opposite way. They followed. Every turn bought students a few seconds. Every monster behind me left one less near the exits. I tore a classroom door from its hinges and used it as a shield through the next intersection. A smaller demon climbed over the top. I slammed the door into the wall and left it flattened beneath the metal. Students behind me reached the stairwell. Then Brock hit me from behind with the bent pipe. I stumbled. He had escaped the shed and used his freedom to hit me from behind. Of course he did. I'm not hiding behind you, Brock snarled. A monster dropped from the ceiling and grabbed him by the throat. The pipe fell from his hand. Cameron! The demon pulled him toward a broken classroom window. Brock clawed at the floor. Please! He expected me to watch. I grabbed the creature's arm, broke its grip, and threw it through a row of lockers. Brock landed at my feet. He stared up at me while the demon tried to rise. I crushed its head into the tile with one kick. Black ash spread through the water. Brock's mouth opened. I pointed toward the exit. Move before your next idea gets somebody killed. He left the bent pipe where it had fallen and ran without looking back. Another monster lunged from behind me. Silver lines snapped around its body. The creature stopped in midair, folded inward, and hit the floor. Serena stood at the far end of the hall. Her school jacket was gone. Tight black sleeves covered her arms, and metal threads ran between her fingers. She looked unfairly good. Then she pulled once and crushed a demon strong enough to tear through a wall. I focused. Brock crawled across her path. Serena planted one boot on his face and looked at me. You two are unbelievably useless. Brock made a muffled protest beneath her soul. Serena tightened one thread around a monster's neck. They're following you. I noticed. The gym has open space and roof supports. We can trap the whole group there. I glanced at the horde turning into the hallway. You've been planning this long? Serena yanked Brock out of a demon's reach without looking at him. Run first. Be suspicious later. That counted as a plan. We pulled the monsters toward the gym. I used myself as bait. Serena used doors, stair rails, and her metal threads to keep the pack tight. Surviving students followed our shouted directions because Brock was no longer the loudest person in the school. Inside the gym, a divider curtain hung from steel cables beneath the roof. Serena pointed upward. "Rat them!" I tore the curtain free and dragged it across the floor. The first wave hit the fabric. Serena's threads snapped around the corners. We pulled. The monsters crashed together inside the curtain. Then their bodies started merging. Arms folded into shoulders. Black plates locked across a widening back. One giant head rose from the bundle, followed by too many eyes. The fused creature tore through the curtain and struck me across the court. I hit the bleachers hard enough to bend them. It braced for me to charge straight back. I stayed down long enough for Serena to cut behind it. Her threads wrapped both ankles. Then I drove into its side while its weight was turned. Serena attacked its legs. The giant caught her threads and dragged her forward. I crossed the court, drove both feet into its chest, and forced it beneath a cracked roof support. The creature grabbed me around the waist. Serena climbed its back, looped her threads around the support, and shouted, "Now, Cameron!" I punched upward. The damaged brace snapped. A steel roof beam dropped through the giant and pinned it to the gym floor. The creature thrashed. Serena wrapped its arms. I drove the beam deeper. The fused demon broke apart into ash. For one breath, the gym went quiet. Brock stood near the exit, soaked and shaking. He looked at Serena. Then he looked at me. Surviving students stepped behind me when another sound came from the hall. One student grabbed the younger boy and pulled him into that line. Brock noticed. He lowered the pipe. Then Eddie screamed my name from the hall. He staggered through the gym doors with blood down his shirt. I ran toward him. Serena shouted my name. "Cameron, stop!" A shadow rose behind Eddie. It formed a long black spike. The spike punched through Eddie's back and came out through his chest. Then it continued into mine. The gym disappeared. Eddie's eyes found me. He tried to say my name. I saw Irene on the apartment floor, her hand pressed against my chest again. Her last words told me to protect who I chose. Blue fire erupted from my body. It burned cold. Frost raced across the shadow demon, locked its arms, and climbed over its face. The creature tried to pull away. I grabbed the spike inside my chest and held it there. The blue flames surged. The demon froze solid. Then it shattered across the gym floor. Serena backed away from the cold spreading beneath my feet. The gym windows frosted white. Every survivor still standing stared at the fire that burned like winter. Serena looked afraid of me. Eddie collapsed. I reached for him. My legs failed before my hand found his. The last thing I saw was Serena running toward us through blue fire. I thought surviving the school attack meant Serena owed me answers. Instead, I woke in her house and discovered the girl had enough weapons to start a small war. Hours after the school attack, I woke in Serena Maddox's guest room. My chest had been bandaged. Steel shutters covered the windows. An axe hung beside the bed. A crossbow waited under the window. Locked metal cases covered the far wall. She had enough weapons to defend a country and kept an axe beside injured guests. A floorboard creaked outside. I grabbed the axe and swung toward the door. Silver threads snapped around my wrist. Serena stepped inside, twisted once, and stopped the blade inches from her face. Her blonde hair was loose. She looked exhausted and annoyingly good at disarming half-dead idiots. "Easy, Cameron!" Serena tightened the threads. "I dragged you out of a burning school. Try not to repay me with an axe." I recognized her and released the handle. The axe hit the carpet. I asked, "Where's Eddie?" Serena's expression softened. "Aegis Medics, the anti-monster team that took us from the school, found a pulse. They say he's alive." My knees gave out before the rest of me understood the sentence. Eddie had been impaled in front of me. I had watched the spike come through his chest. Alive was the only word that mattered. I covered my face and the relief came out ugly. Serena turned away long enough to give me some dignity. I got one full breath. Then I stood and headed for the door. Serena blocked it. "You're staying here," I told her. "You just said Eddie's alive." Serena pointed at my bandages. "Aegis is treating him. You're reopening your wound while arguing." I reached past her. Serena hooked my arm, stepped behind me, and planted me face first on the mattress. The room bounced. I rolled up angry. She put one knee on my shoulder and pinned both wrists with a thread. "Listen carefully," Serena told me. "Your apartment is destroyed. Demons can track you. Your school is full of cameras and ash. Until you can control whatever came out of you, I'm your guardian." I stared sideways at her boot. I pointed at her. "You go to school with me." Serena shrugged. "Administrative detail." I glanced at the axe. "You keep an axe beside the guest bed." "Preparedness," Serena replied. I added, "You burned through a gym wall." Serena leaned closer. "And you're still arguing from the mattress. Fair point. She released me only after I promised to stay until morning." That promise lasted through dinner. That evening, in Serena's kitchen, smoke rolled from a pan while she stood over it holding a fire extinguisher. The armed goddess could crush a demon with metal threads. A chicken breast had defeated her in 6 minutes. I took the pan away. "You know heat can be lowered, right?" Serena crossed her arms. "I was monitoring the situation." I looked into the pan. "The situation is charcoal." Serena pushed the vegetables toward me. Then monitor it into dinner. I cleaned the pan, found another one, and cooked with what survived. Irene taught me because we moved too often for takeout. She used to say a person who could fight but could not feed himself was just an expensive problem. Serena watched me work. Your grandmother taught you all this? I answered. Cooking, laundry, sewing, and how to leave an apartment in 10 minutes. Her eyes dropped to the cutting board. She sounds practical. I said, she was. We ate at a table built for 8 people, only 2 chairs moved. Serena pushed food around her plate. This house is usually quiet. I looked at the empty seats. Mine too, I told her. She met my eyes for a second, then stole another piece from my plate. Apparently emotional intimacy came with food theft. By breakfast, every school attack video had disappeared from student accounts. Serena showed me 3 dead links on her phone. A 4th vanished while I watched. Serena named the agency behind the medics. Aegis Command runs the anti-monster unit that cleans up incidents before the public understands them. They took Eddie. They also want you. A black car waited outside. So much for hiding. That morning, Serena took me downtown to Aegis Command. The supposedly secret headquarters was a glass tower with its name across the front. I looked up at the silver logo. Subtle. Serena kept walking. The hidden parts are underground. I looked back at the logo. That fixes the 40-foot sign. Look, putting the secret part underground did not cancel the 40-foot logo. Inside, 3 security doors opened for Serena without questions. One analyst recognized me from the frozen gym footage. He stopped whispering and moved his chair farther from the aisle. A second analyst noticed the movement and copied him. I had spent years watching people avoid me because Brock had marked me as prey. Aegis staff avoided me because they had watched monsters freeze around my body. Different reason, same empty space. A ceiling scanner swept me while Serena rushed us past 2 glass labs and into a biometric elevator. I had come for answers. The field trip could wait. The doors sealed. The floor dropped hard enough to lift my stomach into my throat. Serena watched my face. Still think the sign is the dangerous part? I told her. I think your whole life needs warning labels. 2 levels later, the elevator opened into a white evaluation room covered in cameras. A purple-haired woman stood alone at the center with a black guitar case. Serena's jaw tightened. Corinne Ashby, Aegis Weapon Specialist! Her evaluations start with property damage. Corinne flipped 2 latches. The guitar case split open into a long rifle with a bladed frame. She fired before Serena finished the sentence. I dropped. The round tore through the wall behind me. Corinne fired again. I rolled beneath it, crossed half the room, and reached for the weapon. A cable snapped from the case and yanked Corinne sideways. Her boot came at my head from an angle no normal kick should reach. I caught her ankle. Corinne twisted, pulled the rifle free, and aimed at my ribs from 3 feet away. I slapped the barrel aside. The shot hit the floor. She drove an elbow at my throat. I caught that too. For 1 second, I held her wrist in one hand and her ankle in the other. Corinne glared. Hit back! I told Corinne, I don't know how hard is too hard yet. Corinne spat. Coward! She released the cable and dropped low. The blade on the guitar weapon swung for my knees. Serena's threads caught it mid-arc. Corinne pulled. Serena pulled harder. The weapon stopped between them. I stepped away before the 2 weapon hoarders demolished the room over professional pride. A side door opened. Director Wallace Kerr entered with 2 guards behind him. Kerr ran Aegis Command, and the cameras followed his face before they followed mine. He looked at the bullet holes, Corinne's reddened hand, and my untouched skin. You could have ended that test sooner, Director Kerr told me. I told Director Kerr I could have injured her sooner. Corinne ripped her weapon free from Serena's threads. He hesitated. I looked at the broken wall. You brought live rounds to a conversation. Let's avoid lectures on restraint. Corinne's mouth tightened. Director Kerr almost smiled. Aegis can give you medical care, training, and protection. I asked, what do you want? Kerr answered, cooperation. I glanced at the cameras. Ownership sounds expensive. Cooperation, Kerr repeated. Our job is simple. We protect humans from monsters. Every demon dies. The marks beneath my sleeve suddenly felt very awake. Director Kerr thought I was an unusual human survivor. I let him keep that mistake. I asked, what happens if a demon saves humans? Director Kerr answered without pausing. We use the rescue. Then we remove the threat. Serena's fingers tightened around 1 silver thread. Corinne watched my face instead of the weapon in her hands. Good. Now I knew exactly how much truth Aegis could handle. Corinne folded the rifle back into the guitar case. Serena watched her. You scratched it! Corinne snapped the last latch. You scratched my floor last month, Serena answered. Your floor attacked first. I looked between Serena's hidden threads and Corinne's weaponized instrument. I cut in. Do women at Aegis own anything normal? Corinne answered first. No. Serena pointed at me. He woke up holding my axe. That ended my advantage. A pair of medics pushed a covered stretcher past the glass corridor outside. I saw the face before the doors closed. Eddie. I crossed the room fast enough that 1 guard reached for his weapon. Serena caught my sleeve. He's stable. Eddie looked pale beneath the lights. A monitor beside him showed a pulse. I pressed my hand to the glass as the stretcher disappeared into another hall. Aegis had given me proof he was alive. They had also put him somewhere I could not reach. I turned to Director Kerr. I want updates on Eddie. No edited summaries. Kerr studied me for a moment. Cooperate, and you get access. That was how Aegis negotiated. They found the person you cared about and put a security badge between you. Their badge bought my cooperation for one purpose. I planned to use every door they opened. While Aegis tried to recruit me, Orson's contacts later reported what was happening outside King Varric's palace in the demon realm. Lucian Crowell, Varric's general, split a stone ridge with one swing as a messenger warned that the passage between worlds was narrowing. Lucian looked at the broken ridge. "Tell the king I'll be ready." That evening, I went straight back to Orson Webb's medicine shop. I shut the door behind me. "I need more suppressors." Orson studied the Aegis visitor badge on my jacket. "Why?" I told Orson. "Their director says every demon dies." The cranky shopkeeper stopped pretending this was a medicine problem. "Suppressors hide power," Orson told me. "They won't teach you to control it." "You need training," I said. "Then train me." He locked the front door. Orson lowered his voice. "Aegis cannot know," I answered. "Neither can Serena." Orson gave me a tired look. "The armed girl who dragged you home? Excellent plan. She will notice nothing." That night, after Serena thought I was asleep, I reached the back door. She was waiting in the dark hallway wearing a sweatshirt and a very suspicious expression. "Going somewhere?" Serena asked. I answered, "Walk." Serena glanced at the clock. "At midnight?" I said. "Less traffic." She stepped closer and smelled the market tea on my jacket. Serena narrowed her eyes. "You're a terrible liar, Cameron," I told her. "You look good interrogating people." Serena blinked once. I used the opening to reach for the lock. Her thread caught the door handle first. Serena warned me. "Be back before sunrise." I looked at her. "You sound worried." Serena released the handle. "I don't care. I dislike replacing windows." My guardian, who did not care, had stayed awake beside the door. I followed Orson beneath an abandoned warehouse and into a sealed stone chamber. The door closed behind us. Orson attacked with his cane. I dodged the first strike. The second clipped my shoulder. The third drove me across the room. "Fight back," Orson ordered. I raised my hands and kept moving. Every full-strength punch carried the memory of a broken foot and Brock's missing teeth. Orson saw the hesitation. Then he used Irene's name like a blade. "Irene survived the old king's war," he snapped. "She died to gutter assassins because she spent her last strength protecting a boy who still refuses to swing." Cold flooded the chamber. Blue fire rolled from my arms. Frost crawled over Orson's cane. He stopped attacking. The shopkeeper looked afraid of me. "That color belonged to King Alden's bloodline," Orson whispered. King Alden had ruled the demon realm before Varric's coup. Orson lowered the cane and gave me the part of the story he had kept back. Years ago, a human woman crossed into the demon realm. King Alden protected her. They fell in love and had a half-human son. Then Varric attacked the royal family. I looked at the blue fire around my hands. "You think Irene carried that child to Earth?" "I think she carried royal blood," Orson answered. "This flame is the first proof. I need to know whether it obeys you." He pressed the tip of his cane against my chest. A strand of blue energy pulled out of me and twisted into a glass vial. Orson placed the vial inside a circle cut into the floor. "One rule," he told me. "That vial holds a real piece of your power. Defeat it and reclaim control. Let it defeat you, and the power returns wilder." He broke the seal. A horned figure erupted from the vial. It carried my blue fire and speed. It attacked without fear. I rushed it. The construct caught my fist and threw me through a stone pillar. I rose and tried again. It moved first, drove a knee into my chest, and buried me in the opposite wall. Blue frost climbed my arms. The construct pulled the heat from my body and grew larger. I forced one hand free and grabbed its horn. It slammed my head into the floor. The room darkened at the edges. Orson struck the circle with his cane. The construct collapsed back into the vial before it finished crushing my chest. I lay on cracked stone, shaking hard enough to rattle my teeth. Aegis's best shooter had failed to touch me. My own power had nearly killed me in under a minute. Orson crouched beside me. "Now you understand the problem." I pushed myself upright. I told Orson, "Reset it tomorrow." He stared. "You can barely stand," I answered. "Then tomorrow starts on the floor." That same night, at Aegis' command, Eddie lay beneath cameras while researchers watched his monitor. They should have been watching the boy while I trained on Earth. Orson's contacts later told me what was happening inside King Varric's palace in the demon realm. Food shipments had stopped. One court officer asked how long the stolen throne planned to wait for the passage to reopen. Varric threw him across the hall and ordered his general, Lucian Crowell, summoned. A servant muttered that the general was never where anyone expected. Lucian stepped from behind him. "I have eyes everywhere." The servant folded so fast, he nearly apologized to the floor. Varric's order was simple. Find the old royal blood before the passage closed. 1 week into my night sessions, Serena cornered me over the kitchen sink. I had just washed the last plate. She blocked the doorway with both arms folded. "Where do you go every night?" Serena asked. I dried my hands. "Walking." She brushed gray dust from my sleeve. "Your sidewalks appear violent." I looked at the dust. "Bad neighborhood." Serena stepped closer. "You leave after midnight. You come back bleeding. People in a relationship usually explain that." I looked at her. She looked at me. "Relationship?" I asked. Serena's ears went pink. "Living arrangement," I smiled. That was a fast retreat. Serena pointed at the stone dust. "Answer the question." I could not tell her I was training with a demon exile. Aegis had promised to kill Orson's species, and I was hiding demon marks of my own, so I dried the plate and walked past her. Serena snapped a silver thread across the hall. "Fine. Keep your secret. Next time you bleed on my floor, clean that too." My guardian, who did not care, was jealous, angry, and billing me for cleanup. Very normal living arrangement. That night, 5 vials floated above Orson's sealed chamber. Each held a piece of my power. The first construct moved like pure speed. A second carried brute strength. Blue fire covered the third. Another raised hard barriers. Frost rolled from the last one. Orson opened every vial. "You nearly died against one," I told him. "You nearly died," Orson corrected. "I was fine." The 5 constructs attacked together. Speed hit first. Strength caught my turn and drove me into the wall. Blue fire cut off one side. A barrier sealed the other. Frost locked both feet. I broke free. The speed construct put me down again. Orson watched from outside the circle. "Rage is fast. Thinking is faster." Easy advice from the man standing behind a seal. I stopped chasing the speed construct. Every time the others rebuilt, the frost figure's horn flashed first. So, I let the strength figure grab me. It lifted me toward the barrier. I kicked off the barrier, twisted over its shoulder, and landed beside the frost figure. The horn flashed. I broke it with both hands. Cold energy punched through my chest. The frost figure collapsed into blue sparks. The sparks entered my skin. Ice spread from my palm across the whole training floor. The speed construct froze mid-step. The barrier cracked. Blue flame died under white frost. The strength construct tore one arm free and charged. I raised my palm. Ice climbed its legs and stopped at the waist. I held the freeze there instead of burying the whole chamber. That tiny choice hurt more than the giant blast. My fingers split at the knuckles and cold blood ran across my wrist. The construct stayed trapped. Orson stared through the seal. "You reclaimed the ice!" I looked at the frozen field. 4 left. His mouth twitched. "Try surviving breakfast first." That afternoon, Aegis turned a routine tower test into public nonsense. The training tower had 10 floors of walls, cables, and moving platforms. Serena and Corinne stood at the starting line while agents crowded the rails above. Corinne tapped her guitar case. "Try keeping up without cheating." Serena flexed her silver threads. "Try carrying one normal object." The signal flashed. They launched upward. Serena used cables as slings. Corinne fired anchors from the guitar case and ripped herself between floors. Then Kira Lowell entered from the side. Kira was a pink-haired Aegis cadet with armored gauntlets and no respect for safety rules. She punched both fists downward and blasted past them. "Late entry!" Kira shouted. "Still winning!" The spectators lost their minds. Serena caught Kira's ankle with a thread. Corinne hooked Kira's belt with a cable. Kira kept climbing while dragging both rivals behind her. Corinne cut her own cable and landed 2 floors higher. Serena used Kira's momentum, swung around the tower, and passed both of them. Kira fired her gauntlets again. The blast sent her through a foam barrier and left only pink hair sticking out. Kira raised one armored thumb. Strategic shortcut. Serena and Corinne reached the top together, both insisting the other had cheated first. Aegis called that training. I called it 3 dangerous women refusing to lose in public. 1 floor below them, Dr. Lenora Fitch showed Director Kerr an impossible chart. I watched that security recording after the lockdown. Dr. Fitch ran Aegis research. She pointed at one line and told Kerr. Eddie Palmer was clinically dead before his vital signs returned. Kerr looked through the glass at Eddie's sedated body. "Keep him contained." Eddie's hand moved against the sheet. Neither of them saw it. That night, Orson stopped using constructs. He entered the chamber himself and locked the seal behind us. "You wanted a real opponent," he told me. "Congratulations." His body expanded. Black armor rolled across his shoulders. His arms thickened until the cranky shopkeeper became a 12-foot monster with stone plates over every joint. I hit him in the chest. My fist stopped. Orson looked down. "Finished?" He swung once. I dodged the arm. The impact reached me a heartbeat later and threw me across the chamber. Delayed force. Very rude ability. I rose and froze his feet. Orson tore through the ice and charged. I slipped under his arm, hit his ribs, and felt another delayed shock travel back through my bones. Every clean strike punished me twice. Orson rushed again and expected me to retreat. I stepped inside his reach. His armored elbow clipped my shoulder. The delayed force tried to spin me away. I froze my own boots to the floor and stayed close. Then I drove 3 short hits into the same plate. The armor repaired each dent before the next blow landed. That was when I noticed the runes on the chamber walls. They flashed whenever Orson's armor repaired itself. His form was drawing strength from the sealed ground. So I stopped attacking him. I attacked the room. Blue frost spread through the floor. I drove both hands down and released the force I had kept buried during Corinne's test. The first crack split the circle. The second ran beneath Orson's feet. He lunged. I punched the floor again. The chamber broke open. Stone pillars dropped. The runes shattered. Orson's armor peeled away before his fist reached me. I caught the smaller hand underneath. We stood in a crater beneath what used to be his training ground. Orson looked around slowly. I rented this place. I looked at the wreckage. You told me to stop holding back. Orson kicked a broken stone. I also expected walls afterward. He pulled his hand free and stared at the ice, still obeying mine. The joke left his face. You can contain it now, Orson told me. Enough to choose where it goes. That was the first praise my monster coach gave without hiding an insult inside it. The next morning, Serena woke to a clean house and breakfast on the table. She came downstairs wearing an oversized sweatshirt and a suspicious stare. In my defense, the sleepy glare was working for her. Serena checked the counters. What did you break? I answered. Your expectations. She looked under the table anyway. I set a plate in front of her. Thanks for letting me stay here. Serena paused with the fork halfway up. Serena told the eggs, you don't have to thank me. Someone has to keep you alive. I sat across from her. You worry a lot for someone who doesn't care. Her face warmed. I worry about property values. I asked how Aegis identified demons. Serena answered while avoiding my eyes. Active power creates a signature. Strong use brings out visible marks. I kept the blue fire buried during Corinne's test, so my wrists stayed clean. I still needed Irene's apartment for answers, and I needed Aegis blind while I searched it. 2 days later, Ridgeview reopened the undamaged wing. Brock tried to restore his old business beside the vending machines. He held out one hand to a younger student. Lunch money. The student looked at Brock's missing teeth. Ask nicely. Someone behind him copied Brock's voice from the fight. Please, Cameron, I'm done. Students laughed in his face. Brock pointed at 2 former followers. Handle this. Neither moved. One picked up his bag and walked away. Brock gave an order. Everyone kept eating. The discount king still thought fear worked. Nobody obeyed him anymore. After class, Serena and I returned to my old apartment because every demon kept demanding a key. I still pictured an object. We checked Irene's desk, the broken cabinets, and the loose boards beneath her bed. No key. Only ash, old clothes, and the family photograph cracked during the first attack. I wiped the glass. A younger Irene stood beside a dark-haired woman holding me as a baby. Serena took the photograph from my hand. Her fingers tightened around the frame. You recognize her, I told Serena. She looked at the unknown woman, then handed the photo back. I recognized the room. That answer arrived too quickly. I stepped between her and the doorway. You knew the pill coding. You knew where the monsters would follow me. Now you know this room. Serena held my stare. I know enough to keep you alive. I did not move. That isn't the same as telling me the truth. Her grip tightened on one silver thread. When I can tell you safely, I will. Before I could press harder, Serena turned toward the ruined doorway. I slid the photograph into my jacket. Serena had recognized something, and she had lied too fast. At Aegis that same evening, Eddie opened his eyes. Later security footage showed him sitting up without calling for help. A doctor entered and asked how he felt. Eddie used a dry voice. Where's Cameron? The doctor reached for the call panel instead of answering. Eddie saw a red label on his chart, biological risk. His expression emptied. An orderly tried to hold him down. Eddie threw the man into a cabinet with one arm. The doctor reached the alarm. Eddie moved before the button lit. The camera shook. When the picture settled, the doctor and orderly were both down. Eddie walked from the medical wing wearing the doctor's white coat over his hospital clothes. The cameras recorded his face. Nobody recognized the danger until he was already inside their secure floors. The next day, I went to Aegis for an update and found half the training division waiting. Rumors about Corinne's test had spread. Director Kerr offered me an Aegis badge. I left it on the table. You get cooperation. The badge stays. A gray-haired veteran laughed from beside the weapon racks. Travis Mott was Aegis's fastest field agent. He had built a career around hitting people before they saw him move. School tricks impressed the cadets, Travis told me. Try them on an adult. Serena stepped forward. He's still injured. Travis smiled at her. Then he can surrender quickly. Kira leaned over the rail above us. He looks better without the badge anyway. Serena looked up. Nobody asked. Kira grinned. That sounded possessive. Serena's thread snapped against the railing beside her hand. Nobody needed a relationship chart. Travis pointed at the weapon racks. Choose anything. Two agents started arguing over which weapon would survive his first pass. Another put money on 10 seconds. Travis heard them and raised the bet. If he touches me once, I will clean this entire room. You know confidence is in danger when it starts making housekeeping bets. Kira leaned farther over the rail. Can we record the cleaning part? The veteran glared at her. He had just promised the whole room a cleanup show. I shook my head. Afraid you'll miss? He asked. I told him, I don't need to see you. That wiped the smile from his face. The rule was simple. If blue fire or marks appeared, Aegis could classify me as a demon. I had to beat its fastest veteran with ordinary movement and exact force. I closed my eyes. Travis vanished. His first step scraped left. The air shifted behind me. I ducked before his fist arrived. He circled faster. Shoes struck the floor in short bursts. Fabric snapped near my right ear. A week of blind sense drills had punished me whenever I trusted my eyes more than my body. Travis committed from my blind side. I turned with the sound. One restrained punch hit him beneath the ribs. His feet left the floor. Travis landed on his back and stayed there. The agent holding the 10-second bet looked at the wall clock. 3 seconds had passed. Nobody reminded Travis about the cleaning promise. They were too busy checking whether he was breathing. I opened my eyes. Director Kerr had lowered the badge. Corinne stopped leaning against the wall. Kira looked from Travis to me and smiled like she had found a new bad decision. Serena checked my wrists first. No marks. For once, holding back felt harder than winning. No one called it a school trick again. Eddie was already moving through the same building in a stolen coat. Seconds after Travis hit the floor, I was still in Aegis Command's training room when every alarm started screaming. Red lights swept over me as steel doors dropped over both exits. Kira Lowell jumped from the upper rail and landed beside me in her armored gauntlets. Lock down, Kira told me. Come on. Director Kerr's voice filled the room. An intruder killed medical staff. All civilians moved to containment rooms. Kira grabbed my sleeve and pulled me into the corridor. Agents rushed past us toward the medical wing. Corinne and Serena were trapped behind another security door, already arguing with the lock. A young man in a white doctor's coat stumbled from a side hall. I knew his face before he lifted it. I called, Eddie! He stopped. Then Eddie Palmer smiled and ran into me. I caught him with both arms. My best friend was standing. His chest felt solid beneath the coat. His skin was cold, but I could hear breath beside my ear. I held on harder. Look, I hugged the murderer first, so I was not qualified to judge Kira's timing. Over my shoulder, Eddie's smile vanished for half a second. Kira saw 2 teenage boys hugging during a lockdown and chose chaos. Kira announced. A safe room with 2 handsome survivors? Aegis finally designed a useful emergency. Serena's voice snapped through the wall speaker. Kira, move! Cameron away from the stranger. Kira looked at Eddie. She gets jealous during mass casualty events. It's impressive! Eddie laughed. The sound arrived a little late. Kira pushed all 3 of us into the nearest threat containment room. The door sealed behind us. A central lamp threw sharp shadows from the table, chairs, and wall cabinets. The room's rule appeared on the panel. Once a threat alert activated, the lock sealed both directions until command cleared it. Excellent design for trapping civilians with the threat. Eddie looked around. They kept me asleep. I woke up alone. I touched his shoulder. You were impaled! Eddie rubbed his chest. I remember the gym. Then pain, I asked. Do you remember Serena carrying us out? Eddie looked toward the speaker. The blonde girl. Sure. He had spent weeks teasing me about Serena. Eddie would have called her by name and made the whole answer embarrassing. This version sounded like he had read the memory from a report. Kira circled him once. The doctor's coat hung too wide across his shoulders, and no patient band showed at either wrist. His eyes moved to Kira's throat before returning to mine. The wall screen flashed on. Director Kerr appeared beside a security image of Eddie wearing the same white coat. In the image, 2 medical workers lay behind him. Cameron, Kerr ordered. Step away from Eddie Palmer. Kira's grin disappeared. Outside the room, Serena hit the control panel. Open it! Corinne pulled Serena back from the sparking screen. Containment locks both ways. Then break it, Serena snapped. Corinne opened her guitar case. Move! I was about to. Director Kerr tried one override. The panel rejected him. Then the screen showed Eddie striking an orderly and leaving the medical wing in a stolen coat. Kira looked down. A dark stain marked one cuff. She touched it with 2 fingers. Eddie caught her wrist. His grip tightened until the metal in her gauntlet creaked. I stepped closer. Let her go! Eddie looked at me with my friend's face and no warmth behind it. Eddie's mouth answered. You always get to give orders now. Kira pulled against his hand. This reunion is getting weird. Eddie's fingers lengthened. Black claws pushed through the stolen sleeve. I hid his arm away from Kira. The claws cut the table in half. The friendly expression dropped. Eddie laughed with his head tilted too far. Kira drove one armored fist into his ribs. The impact launched him across the room. He landed on the wall, folded into the shadow behind a cabinet, and vanished before his feet touched down. Kira raised both gauntlets. He's in the walls! A claw came out of her own shadow. I pulled her aside before it reached her spine. The claw ripped through one gauntlet instead and left 4 black grooves across the metal. Students died because they followed you, the thing using Eddie's mouth told me. Your grandmother died because she carried you. Eddie died because he called your name. I drove it into the wall. The body flattened into black shadow before my fist landed. Darkness raced beneath the cabinets. It rose behind Kira. I turned too late. A claw opened her shoulder and threw her across the room. Kira hit the floor and locked one gauntlet over the wound. Kira clenched her teeth. I'm conscious! Keep moving! The shadow slid across the wall. I struck it. My hand hit concrete. Eddie's body formed beneath the table, slashed my ribs, and vanished through the chair shadows. I spread frost across the floor to mark his steps. A black trail appeared behind the table, crossed the wall, and ended at my feet. He rose inside my shadow and hit me under the jaw. I crashed into the wall screen. Outside, Serena shouted my name and wrapped silver threads around the doorframe. Corinne fired an anchor into the lock. Their combined pull bent the steel and still failed to open it. The central lamp gave the creature a dozen dark lanes. Every object became a door. The parasite used Eddie's voice from behind me. You promised to protect me! I spun. Nothing! Then a second voice came from the same body. Buried under the parasite, Eddie whispered through his own throat. Cameron, help me! That was Eddie's real voice. My hands opened before I could stop them. I called Eddie's name and reached toward the body. For 1 second, his face changed, the eyes filled with pain, and his fingers clawed at his own throat. Then the parasite took the expression back. It rose from my shadow and drove both claws into my back. I hit the floor. It leaned near my ear using Eddie's mouth. He can feel everything. Kira tried to stand. The parasite kicked her gauntlet away and smiled at me. It expected Eddie's pain to keep my hands open. For several seconds it was right. Then I watched the shadows around its feet. The creature never disappeared under the lamp itself. It moved through the sharp darkness the lamp cast around everything else. Those shadows needed the light. I looked at Kira. When it goes dark, stay still. She nodded once. I threw a broken chair leg through the central lamp. The room went black. The parasite laughed from Eddie's mouth. You made it easier! I closed my eyes. The duel upstairs had proved I could track speed by sound. My night training had taught me what a body did before it struck. Kira held her breath. A bare foot scraped near the left wall. Fabric shifted behind me. Claws cut the air beside my cheek. I caught the wrist. The parasite tried to flatten into shadow. There were no sharp lanes left. The body stayed solid in my grip. I drove it into the wall. It clawed my shoulder. I hit it again. The second impact cracked the panel behind its head. It tried to slip toward the dark seam beneath the door. The seam stayed flat. No lamp meant no sharp shadow to carry it. The parasite panicked and attacked as a body. I heard the right foot turn before the claws moved. I trapped the wrist, broke its balance, and drove it back into the same damaged panel. The third impact folded the stolen doctor's coat beneath it. I pinned Eddie's body by the throat. Blue frost spread from my hand. The parasite switched back to my friend's voice. Cameron, please! Underneath it, Eddie's real voice whispered, Don't let it keep me. I knew the difference now. The thing wearing him smiled. We're still friends. My friend died at school, I told it. You're the thief who kept his face. Blue freezing fire covered Eddie's body. The parasite screamed through 2 voices. I held the frost steady until the claws stopped moving. Then the frozen body shattered and collapsed into black ash. The room went silent. Eddie deserved a grave. My power erased even that. When the containment door finally opened, medics pulled Kira toward treatment while I walked past Director Kerr. Dr. Lenora Fitch, Aegis's research chief, blocked the corridor. Eddie was dead when he reached us, Dr. Fitch admitted. A shadow parasite restarted the body and copied enough memory to pass as him. Eddie's real voice stayed trapped underneath. Dr. Fitch continued, We kept the host because demon tissue usually turns to ash. I stopped. I cut in. You knew he was dead. Fitch held my stare. We knew the body was valuable. I ripped the red biological risk label from her folder and pressed it against the glass beside Eddie's ash. That was my friend, I told her. You labeled him inventory and locked me in with the result. Director Kerr stepped between us. Aegis has seen that species under the enemy general hunting you. It used Eddie because Eddie could reach you. Their secure lab had handed the parasite my friend's face and sealed me inside with it. Corinne looked through the open safe room door at Kira's blood and Eddie's ash. You hesitated, Corinne told me. Kira paid for it. Serena stepped into her path. Cameron destroyed his best friend's body because your researchers kept it on a shelf. Pick another moment to act superior. Corinne's jaw tightened. A demon does not deserve hesitation. Then your agency should stop collecting them, Serena fired back. Orson had called the blue fire royal. I left for his shop before anyone offered another label. That night, rain covered the market windows when I entered Orson Webb's shop. I shut the door hard enough to shake the tea tins. No more partial answers, I told him. Tell me why that parasite targeted Eddie. Tell me what the key is. Orson looked at the ash on my sleeve. Then the cranky shopkeeper set his cane aside and knelt. The movement hit harder than any lecture could. Cameron Avery, Orson said. You are the son of King Alden and Queen Isolde. Queen Isolde was the human woman who had crossed into the demon realm. King Alden married her and ruled beside her. Their half-human child was me. The man who had broken me through stone would not lift his eyes until I pulled him up. I stared at Orson kneeling on the shop floor. The prince from your story. The legitimate heir, Orson answered. From the floor, he continued. Varric was King Alden's younger brother. He used the human queen and hybrid heir to justify a coup, killed the loyalists, and stole the throne. Irene carried you to Earth when the palace fell. Orson touched the frost scar on his cane. I suspected at the shop. The blue flame proved the bloodline. Your control proved the power had returned. Irene's final memories flashed again. A woman pushed a wrapped baby into her arms. Soldiers closed behind them. A wall of light opened ahead. Orson kept his head lowered. Irene sealed your power so Varric could not sense the royal line. She raised you until the seal broke. I grabbed his shoulder and pulled him upright. Did Irene know what would happen when she returned the power? Orson's face tightened. She knew the seal might kill you. The assassins had already put a blade through your chest. Returning the power was the only chance left. I let go of his shoulder. Irene had chosen the only chance left. And the key? I asked. Orson looked directly at me. Orson answered, the key is your royal authority. The rift is the passage between Earth and the demon realm, Orson told me. King Alden's royal authority could open it or seal it. That authority lives in you now, Orson continued. Varric needs you alive. If he forces your power into the rift, he can open the route for his army. Kill you too early, and he loses the one key he cannot replace. Irene had guarded the key by guarding me. Every attack had been aimed at the power inside my chest. Can I close the rift? I asked. With control, Orson answered. You can close it. With one uncontrolled release, you can tear it wider. That was the crown I inherited. One wrong burst could open the door for an army. I walked into the rain and started running. Rain soaked the ash from my sleeve, but I kept running until the market lights disappeared behind me. Irene had died hiding that power. Eddie had died because the enemy wanted it, so I made one decision, master it, before anyone else became leverage. That same night, my royal authority reached the rift before I did. On the other side, Lucian Crowell had already stepped into the passage toward Earth. The night Orson named me prince, the rift answered from the other world. I did not see that side of it then. Serena, Orson, and later Aegis records gave me the sequence. A blue pulse ran through the stone passage beneath King Varric's palace. The stolen crown king felt my royal authority touch the rift. He knew the same power could seal it. Varric stood so fast his throne cracked beneath one hand. He demanded Lucian Crowell's location and ordered the crossing accelerated. Look, I had learned the word prince 12 hours earlier. Varric was already panicking like I had reached for his crown. To understand why Lucian entered a passage that killed weaker demons, Orson took the story back to the coup. Inside the burning palace, Queen Isolde found Irene with soldiers closing from both ends. Isolde pushed me, still an infant, into Irene's arms. Take Cameron to Earth, don't let Varric touch his authority. Irene reached for her weapon. Queen Isolde shoved her toward the escape route. My son lives! That is the order! Irene ran. Before the rift, she found her own children beneath a collapsed stairwell. Lucian was the older boy. His little sister wore Irene's silver pendant and clung to his coat. High demons age slowly. Children from that night could still look young centuries later. Irene ordered Lucian to take his sister to the north shelter. Lucian looked at the baby in her arms. You're coming with us, Irene promised. I'll find you after he's safe. Then she left with me. Lucian dragged his sister through the burning city and reached the shelter before dawn. The door had been broken inward. Every loyalist inside was dead. They waited until the fires went dark. Irene never came. Other loyalists later rescued the girl and hid her under another identity. Lucian chose Varric. Years later, he entered one of Varric's military camps and demanded a place in the army. The recruiting officer looked at his little sister. Soldiers don't drag weakness behind them. Lucian led the child into a forest and left her there. She called after him. He kept walking. When he returned alone, the officer let him pass. That was the man coming for me. My awakening had opened one narrow chance in the rift, so Lucian entered first. The red pressure stripped armor from his shoulders and threw weaker demons back. Later, Serena told me the crossing forced travelers to relive their worst memories. The forest replayed around Lucian. He kept moving one hand at a time. The child Irene saved had opened the passage. The son she left behind forced his way through it. The next evening, I returned to Serena's house with rain still drying on my jacket. A blue butterfly rested on the kitchen window. It opened its wings when I approached, then vanished through a gap too small for any normal insect. Serena Maddox sat at the table with a first aid kit open beside her. She had waited awake again. My guardian, who did not care, pointed at the chair. "Sit down. Your shoulder is bleeding through the bandage." I sat. "You keep calling yourself my guardian. You also keep lying whenever Irene comes up." Serena pulled the torn bandage free. "Those subjects are unrelated. You recognize the pills, the photograph, and my marks." "That's impressive for an unrelated subject." Serena tightened the fresh wrap harder than necessary. I looked at her hands. Was that medical care or a confession attempt? Serena met my eyes. That was encouragement to stop talking. In my defense, her angry concentration looked unfairly good. The next morning, at Aegis command, Kira Lowell reached me before the security desk did. Her shoulder was still bandaged from Eddie's claws. One gauntlet carried 4 black grooves. Kira hooked her good arm around mine. The handsome civilian survived, morale restored. Silver thread looped around Kira's waist. Serena lifted her away from me and placed her 2 steps to the left. Kira looked down at the thread. "Does guardian mean girlfriend here?" Serena released her. "No." I looked at Serena. That answer came out fast. Serena pointed toward the elevators. "Your blood test is waiting." Kira smiled at me. That was not a denial with confidence. Serena's thread snapped against Kira's damaged gauntlet. Aegis separated Serena from me before the test room. Dr. Lenora Fitch, the research chief who had kept Eddie's corpse, closed the glass door between us. I submitted because the registration would open restricted floors. I planned to use every inch of that access. One scanner crossed my eyes and wrists. Dr. Fitch drew 1 vial of blood. The monitor flashed 3 lines, then replaced them with a single result. No abnormal signature detected. Dr. Fitch's hands stopped above the keyboard. She looked at the blood, looked at me, and locked the detailed screen before Serena could see it through the glass. I asked, "What did you hide?" Dr. Fitch removed the vial. "Nothing relevant. You locked nothing very quickly." Her mouth tightened. "Your registration is complete." A normal result should have relaxed her. Instead, she carried my blood away herself. That afternoon, I met Orson in the storage room beneath his medicine shop. His original training chamber was still a crater. Orson opened a small royal seal. It proved he had served King Alden under an older identity. He asked me to keep calling him Orson Webb. That was the name his enemies could not track. He had hidden the royal identity for years. My return forced it into the open. Orson planted his frost-scarred cane on the floor and knelt again. I asked how many loyalists remained. Orson answered, "Enough to die badly if I call them before they are ready." "Then call them as survivors first," I told him. "We can discuss soldiers after they reach us alive." Orson watched me for 1 beat, then lowered his head. "I will find King Alden's surviving soldiers," Orson vowed. He tightened his grip on the cane. "I will gather every loyalist Varric failed to kill." Orson lifted his head. "Then I will put you on your father's throne." I pulled him up by the shoulder. "Start with keeping them alive. Crowns can wait." Orson's smile was small and tired. "That sounded like a king. That sounded like someone who just lost his best friend." The smile left him. He nodded. "Then I will move quickly." That same full moon night, Lucian broke through a red-lit lake outside the city. He came out on one knee with smoke rising from his back. The rift closed behind him before the water settled. That same night in the demon realm, blue butterflies appeared in villages loyal to King Alden. Families followed them into the forest and vanished from Varric's reach. A palace steward reported the movement. Varric seized him by the throat. "Find the resistance before Lucian finds the heir." Orson had promised me an army. The enemy general had already reached Earth. Hours later, I was riding home when a familiar cold pressure touched the edge of my senses. I looked through the bus window and saw Serena crossing an empty service road. A tall man in a hood followed her without moving like a man. I got off at the next light and doubled back. Serena led him away from traffic and into a deserted maintenance yard. She waited until the last worker cleared the gate, then turned before he reached the fence. I stepped through the gate. "You spend months calling me suspicious, then lead strangers into alleys alone." Serena glanced at me. "I had this handled. That sentence has a terrible survival record." The hooded figure dropped onto all fours. Its legs fused into a scaled tail. The jaw split wider, and 2 black fangs slid over its lower lip. The serpent scout hissed at Serena. "Traitor! Give me the key!" Serena raised both hands. Her silver threads turned blood red. Dark marks spread across her cheeks. Claws lengthened from her fingers. Then several pale tails opened behind her and filled half the yard. The girl who checked me for demon marks had been hiding enough of her own to start a collection. Serena moved first. Red threads caught the serpent's throat and slammed it through a concrete barrier. The scout twisted free by shedding a strip of scales. Its tail whipped low. Serena jumped, crossed both threads, and cut the tail against the pavement. The serpent spat a thin black spray. Serena blocked most of it with one tail. One drop struck beneath her collar. She landed, took 2 steps, and her left arm went numb. The serpent saw it and charged. I hit the creature from the side. It crossed the yard, broke the gate, and rolled into the street. Blue frost covered one of its arms. I started after it, Behind me, Serena fell to one knee. Black veins spread from her collar toward her throat. The serpent ran. I let it go. I caught Serena before her face reached the pavement. Her tails faded while I lifted her. Serena tried to push me away. Her hand barely moved. "The scout," she whispered. "It can run." "You can't." I carried her home. Inside Serena's living room, I lowered her onto the couch and pressed cold through my palm around the poison vein. The frost slowed the black line before it reached her jaw. Serena forced red energy around the wound until her breathing steadied. She would live. I sat beside her and placed Irene's photograph on the table. "Full truth," I told Serena. "No more Guardian edits." Serena looked at the photograph, then at the fading marks on her hands. "I'm a demon," Serena admitted. "I knew what the suppressors were the first day Brock spilled them." "I waited," Serena continued. "Queen Isolde entered the demon realm as an Aegis agent." She kept her eyes on the photograph. "After she became queen, she ordered loyalists to protect her son if the palace fell." She pointed toward the window where the butterfly had appeared. "Those loyalists became the Blue Wing Network," Serena added. "Blue Wing uses those butterflies to move people, carry signals, and watch dangerous ground." She nodded toward me. "One found you when your seal started leaking. And you?" Serena touched the cracked edge of Irene's photograph. Irene knew Blue Wing was watching. Her thumb stopped over the crack. "She made me promise that your blood stayed hidden until you could survive the truth." I looked at her hand on the frame. "So she trusted you." "She trusted the mission," Serena answered. Her voice dropped. "I wanted the rest." Serena held my stare. "Blue Wing assigned me to watch you." She glanced at the hidden screen. "I stayed close because Irene's suppressors were failing and Aegis was already collecting footage." "How long?" Her silence answered first. Serena finally said, "Longer than Ridgeview." The armed goddess had monitored my life, moved into my fights, and then declared herself my guardian like that settled the paperwork. I asked, "Why keep lying after Irene died?" Serena's fingers closed around the edge of the couch. "Aegis kills demons. Varric kills anyone protecting you." She looked at the fading marks on her hands. "Telling you before you controlled your own could have exposed both of us. You still chose for me." "Yes," Serena said, "and I was wrong." Her fingers dug into the couch until the fabric creaked. She still did not take it back. She reached beneath the couch and opened a hidden panel. A small screen showed copied Aegis footage from a restricted level. Agents entered a blank section of wall and disappeared. The next file carried Queen Isolde's name. 40 seconds of the recording had been removed. Serena tapped the missing section. "Aegis erased part of your mother's history. They also built something behind that wall." Dr. Fitch had hidden my blood result. Serena had found the wall. I took the new access card from my jacket. "Then we stop asking Aegis for answers," I told her. "We go inside and take them." The next night, Serena and I used my fresh Aegis access against Aegis. The poison had faded to a bruise beneath her collar. Her left hand still shook when she thought I was not looking. I told her to stay home. Serena clipped a thread spool beneath her sleeve. "You got lost in my house during your first hour." She checked the spool. "You're not infiltrating a military lab alone." "That was one hallway. You attacked me with an axe." The guardian who did not care won before we reached the car. Inside Aegis Command, my new card opened the public elevators and 3 lower checkpoints. Serena supplied the route the cameras did not show. Her copied footage ended at a blank wall on the restricted level. We reached it during a shift change. I pressed my card to a maintenance panel. Serena slid one silver thread through the seam and caught a hidden latch. The wall opened. Look, Aegis had built a secret room beneath its giant public headquarters. Subtlety had officially left the building. The corridor smelled like disinfectant and smoke. Vertical glass tanks lined both sides. Living demons floated inside them. One had its arms chained behind it. Another breathed through a mask while technicians had marked sections of its skin through the glass. A third opened black eyes when I passed. It pressed one hand against the tank. Demons turned to ash when they died. The tanks kept bodies alive beneath restraints and sampling marks. Aegis had built its collection around that rule. Serena stared at the nearest restraint. "They call every demon a threat, then they store them like spare parts." The tank's occupant struck the glass once. An alarm light blinked. We moved before a technician checked it. At the corridor's end, Serena opened Queen Isolde's file. My mother's Aegis photograph showed her in field gear beside an ocean map. One line beneath it read, "Passage Expedition, one-way entry route." Footsteps entered the hidden corridor. Director Wallace Kerr had opened the wall behind us. Serena pulled me between 2 storage racks and looked up. A maintenance duct crossed the ceiling. She fired a thread through the grate, climbed first, and dragged me after her. The grate settled as Director Kerr entered the records room below. He stopped beside the tank that had struck its glass. Director Kerr touched the blinking alarm, then looked toward Queen Isolde's cabinet. The drawer Serena had opened sat half an inch crooked. Kerr spoke into his collar. "Seal the restricted elevators. Someone accessed the old expedition files." Serena's fingers closed around my wrist. One loose screw rolled beneath my elbow. I caught it before it dropped through the grate. Director Kerr walked directly under us. He looked up. The duct held our combined weight with one tiny metal complaint. Kerr waited. Then the tank alarm changed tone on Kerr's phone. He moved toward the laboratory entrance to answer it. Inside the duct, Serena lay pressed along one side and I occupied the remaining 6 inches. Her hair covered half my face. I whispered, "Your infiltration plan is attacking my mouth." Serena shifted closer to pull the hair away. Her face stopped inches from mine. For one dangerous second, neither of us moved. In my defense, the vent was making a very strong argument. Serena's hair lifted again and brushed toward the far end. She looked past me. "That's airflow. I thought you were leaning in." Serena's cheeks warmed. "You think highly of yourself under pressure. You're lying on top of me." She moved first and crawled toward the current. Romance lost to ventilation. The moving air led to a second grate above another laboratory. Corinne Ashby sat below with one sleeve rolled past her elbow. Dr. Orrin Mallory, the doctor assigned to Elite Agent Recovery, stood beside her. A syringe on his tray held dark red fluid. Corinne looked at it. "The last treatment already put me back in the field." Dr. Mallory checked her arm. "Your recovery slowed after the school incident. I'm increasing the dose." Corinne's eyes narrowed. "You said this was standard support." Dr. Mallory pushed the needle in. "It is standard for selected agents." Corinne watched the fluid enter her arm. The loudest anti-demon fighter in Aegis was receiving a secret injection 10 feet from captive demons. Corinne's question told me she did not know what was inside the syringe. Neither did we. Serena recorded the syringe and the doctor through the grate. Then Serena pointed to the monitor behind Mallory. Queen Isolde's operation file was opened beside deep ocean coordinates. The route began in human waters and ended at the rift. My mother had entered through that Aegis route. I memorized the location while Serena copied one image. The grate clicked beneath her wrist. Below us, Dr. Mallory turned toward the ceiling. Corinne followed his eyes and unfolded one blade from her guitar case. Serena pulled me backward. Her poisoned arm buckled inside the narrow shaft. I caught her around the waist before her boot struck the grate. She whispered, "You can let go now. Your survival record says otherwise." Corinne's blade punched through the duct behind my heel. We crawled faster, dropped through a service hatch, and landed inside a utility corridor as alarms began closing the restricted level. Serena kept the copied image. I kept the coordinates in my head. We left through the same public lobby that displayed Aegis's heroic recruitment posters. The captive demons remained breathing beneath them. While Serena and I were beneath Aegis, Lucian was inside my old apartment. The scout reports had given Lucian Irene's building, and the royal trace led him to our ruined door. I watched the building footage later. He stepped through the broken doorway and searched every room without touching the ash. The lobby camera caught him lifting Irene's cracked picture frame and breathing in near the wood. Then he went straight to her desk. Inside Irene's desk he found a second print of the photograph I carried. Queen Isolde held me as a baby. Irene stood beside her. Lucian tore the infant from the picture and let the piece fall. A building worker entered behind him with a flashlight. "You can't be in here." Lucian turned. The worker saw the black marks on his face and reached for a radio. Lucian held up the torn image. "Where is Cameron Avery?" The worker backed toward the hall. "Police sealed this apartment. I don't know him." He pressed the radio button. Lucian struck once. The radio hit the floor beside the body. Then Lucian took the torn photograph and left through the window. That same night in the Demon Realm, Bluewing Scouts later confirmed what Varric did to widen the rift. The Demon Realm was starving. The passage remained too narrow for an army. Chained creatures were dragged to the red opening beneath his palace. He threw them in one by one. The first creature clawed at the stone until the chains tore skin from its wrists. A guard hesitated before pushing the second. Varric looked at him. The guard shoved harder. Each body burned inside the passage and widened it another few inches. A palace steward reported that blue butterflies were moving whole villages into a forest resistance. Varric forced the steward to his knees. "Find them before I meet more bodies." The stolen crowned king fed his own subjects to the rift, then punished the steward for reporting that families were escaping. Adele's damaged bluewing signal recorded what happened after Orson's warning. Before Orson could move those families, he met 2 loyalists in a shuttered storefront. Adele Pryor was the younger one. She carried bluewing messages beneath her coat. Orson placed 3 bluewing seals on the counter. Each one carried a different evacuation route. Orson told Adele and the other loyalist, "Lucian crossed. Move every family tonight." He pushed the seals toward them. "No fixed shelters. Burn the routes after the last child passes." The older loyalist touched one seal. "We heard the royal flame returned." Orson answered, "You heard correctly." Adele used her first question on the prince. "Does King Alden's son live?" Orson nodded. "He lives." Adele smiled. Orson left through the rear door to warn the next cell. Lucian entered through the front seconds later. The second loyalist threw a blue-wing seal through the rear door, then rushed Lucian with a short blade. Lucian caught the wrist, broke the weapon, and drove the loyalist through the storefront glass. Adele used the opening. She fired a red thread around a roof pipe and pulled herself into the alley. Lucian's next strike cut across her side before the thread carried her clear. She landed badly and kept moving. The loyalist behind her tried to rise. Lucian struck once. The loyalist fell and turned to ash. Lucian stepped over the broken seal and entered the alley. He looked at the drops on the pavement and followed. While Lucian followed Adele's blood, Aegis field footage caught what Varric's widened rift did next. Minutes later, downtown asphalt split open with Travis Mott racing toward the break. Cars dropped nose first as a giant pit tore through the street. Demons climbed out between crushed traffic and fleeing civilians. Aegis lost the option to hide the war. A demon lifted a compact car above a mother and child. The speedster crossed the street in a flash, pulled both civilians clear, and returned before the car hit. His next pass struck the demon 6 times and dropped it into the pit. Then Travis reached the sinking bus and tore open its rear door. He moved 3 passengers behind the Aegis line before either nearby demon finished turning. Kira landed beside him with her injured shoulder taped and the parasite's claw marks still carved across one gauntlet. Her armored field partner raised a shield. "First city breach! Try fighting something before flirting with it." Kira fired both gauntlets and launched into the pit. "I can multitask." She punched a horned demon back into the opening and used its face to stop her landing. Another creature caught her bandaged shoulder and lifted her. Kira drove the damaged gauntlet into its jaw. The old claw grooves split wider, but the blast still launched the demon through a traffic light. Her armored partner planted the shield beneath the bus and stopped it sliding farther into the crater. Corinne arrived above them on a cable from her guitar weapon. She fired through one demon, folded the rifle into a blade, and cut another away from a trapped family. A third monster leaped from the pit behind her. Corinne's cable wrapped its neck. She swung it into 2 more attackers and pinned all 3 beneath a fallen street sign. A news helicopter caught the whole move. Travis cleared the crosswalk. Kira and her partner broke the creatures holding the bus. Corinne pinned the last attacker to a concrete wall. The first wave was finished. Civilians who had been running stopped behind the Aegis line. Kira raised her damaged gauntlet. "That was my promotion, right?" The pit answered before her partner could. A hand wider than the street gripped the edge. A colossal demon pulled itself upward and blocked the skyline. Kira lowered her fist. Nobody mentioned promotions again. By the time Serena and I reached the downtown pit, the thing rising from it made Aegis's first wave look like practice. Its shoulders scraped both sides of the street. 6 eyes opened across its head. Kira's armored partner had asked whether she could fight something she could not flirt with. The colossal demon looked down at her. Kira stopped talking. You know the situation is cooked when Kira Lowell loses the urge to comment. The creature swung one arm. Travis pulled 2 civilians clear, but the impact still threw him through a bus shelter. Kira crossed both gauntlets and blocked the next strike. The damaged armor split along Eddie's claw marks. She hit the pavement hard. Corinne fired 3 rounds into the demon's face. The wounds closed before the casings landed. She fired a cable around its neck and anchored the other end to a collapsed light pole. Kira locked both gauntlets around one ankle while her partner braced the shield against the other. Travis crossed its vision in bursts and drew all 6 eyes away from the trapped civilians. For 1 second, the field team had the giant bound. Then it stood. The cable ripped the light pole from the street. Kira and her partner were dragged across the pavement. Travis took the backswing across both arms and vanished through a storefront window. The colossal creature reached for Corinne. Across the city at the same time, Orson found Adele Pryor beneath an abandoned rail platform. Her damaged blue-wing signal kept recording. That was how I later heard the exchange. Adele had made it 3 blocks from Lucian's ambush. Her coat was dark with blood. One blue-wing seal was crushed inside her hand. Orson caught her before she fell. Adele gripped his sleeve. "Lucian crossed!" "He followed us." Orson looked toward the blood trail behind her. Adele forced out one more question. "King Alden's son, does he truly live?" Orson answered. "Cameron lives." Relief reached her face before death did. Adele smiled and turned to ash in his arms. Back at the pit, every Aegis screen ordered unregistered personnel away from the field. Director Kerr's voice came through Serena's stolen receiver. "Cameron Avery, hold position. You are not cleared for deployment." Aegis gave me one order. Naturally, I failed it in under 3 seconds. Corinne disappeared beneath the colossal demon's hand. I handed the receiver to Serena. "Clear me later." Serena caught my wrist. "I'll find Orson's signal." "You stop that thing." I ran. The colossal demon lifted its palm for a second strike. Corinne rolled from the crater beneath it, but her guitar weapon had jammed under broken concrete. The hand came down. I hit Corinne from the side and carried both of us clear. We crossed the street before the palm crushed the pavement behind us. Corinne shoved away from me. I had it. Her weapon was still buried under the demon's footprint. I looked at the crater. Corinne followed my eyes and stopped arguing. The giant turned toward the civilians behind the Aegis line. I planted one foot on a crushed car and jumped. It expected another bullet. I drove one fist beneath its jaw. Blue frostfire flashed through the colossal body. Ice covered all 6 eyes. The force lifted the demon off the street and broke the armor across its chest. It landed inside the pit, then the whole body collapsed into black ash. One strike. The news helicopter caught it from above. Travis climbed from the broken shelter and looked from the empty pit edge to my fist. Kira lowered both damaged gauntlets. Corinne pulled her guitar weapon from the concrete and did not call me a coward. Aegis agents who had blocked me from deployment opened a path without being asked. Director Kerr's voice returned through the receiver. Who authorized that? I picked it up from the pavement. Nobody. A pause followed. Then Kerr changed channels. All units give Avery field access. The order came after the demon was ash. Corinne pulled her guitar weapon free, met my eyes, and stepped aside. Then Serena's voice cut in. Cameron, I found Orson! The relief from the one shot lasted 3 seconds. While Aegis stared at the ash, Orson reached a Blue Wing safehouse and warned every loyalist inside. The safehouse camera kept transmitting after Lucian arrived. Serena recovered the broken feed later. Lucian followed Adele, Orson told the room. Take the families through separate exits. Leave nothing he can track. Lucian came through the front wall before the first loyalist reached the door. One swing took the man's head. His body turned to ash. Orson struck Lucian's ribs with the frost-scarred cane. The delayed force cracked the wall a heartbeat later. Lucian barely moved. Orson reversed the cane and drove a second pulse through the floor. Lucian caught the weapon and sent Orson's own delayed force back through the handle. Orson's shoulder broke against the wall. Move! Orson shouted. One loyalist slapped the final Blue Wing seal against the wall. A butterfly signal fled toward every nearby cell. Then the remaining loyalists rushed together. Red threads locked Lucian's arm. A spear struck his shoulder. Another loyalist grabbed his waist. Lucian tore free and kept walking. Their sacrifice bought Orson the back alley while the safehouse turned to ash behind him. Lucian followed. Orson crossed a crowded street and tried to pull the hunt away from civilians. Lucian stopped beside a delivery driver who had left his truck to help people evacuate. The driver raised both hands. Lucian killed him with one strike. Then he looked toward the alley where Orson had hidden. Keep running, Lucian called. I can keep choosing strangers. A couple tried to drag the driver away. Lucian turned toward them. Orson stepped back into the street. That choice was exactly what Lucian wanted. Orson raised his cane. Your anger belongs to me. Leave them out of it. Lucian smiled. You all said that after choosing him. Their first collision shattered every window on the block. Aegis drones caught the blast and placed one label across every screen. Code 9. Aegis used that alert for one thing, a humanoid threat capable of destroying a city. The live feed appeared on the receiver in my hand. Lucian stood in the street. Orson was the man beneath his blade. I moved before Director Kerr finished ordering a team. Serena met me at the pit entrance with her silver threads already out. Aegis will kill Orson too, Serena warned. We get there first. We crossed the city ahead of the official convoy. I ran over rooftops. Serena used her threads to swing between buildings and cut every corner. The feed kept playing on her wrist screen. Orson struck Lucian's knee and released delayed force into the pavement. The street dropped beneath them. Lucian stepped through the collapse. His blade cut across Orson's cane arm. The arm hit the street with the cane still inside its hand. Orson stayed upright. He drove one shoulder into Lucian and bought another step for the civilians behind him. Lucian swept low. Orson's leg came away beneath the knee. He fell. Serena's breathing changed beside me. The official Aegis team was still several blocks behind. Lucian raised his blade over Orson's neck. I left the last rooftop hard enough to break the concrete beneath my foot. The blade started down. I hit Lucian before it landed. We crossed the street together and went through the front of an empty store. The impact buried him beneath brick and steel. I landed between Orson and the wreckage. Blue frostfire spread across the road behind my back. Orson looked up at me through blood and dust. For 1 second, his face changed. Your father stood like that, Orson whispered. Lucian came out of the ruined store carrying half a support beam. He threw it. I broke it with one arm. Lucian Crowell, the general who had crossed worlds for my blood, finally stood in front of me. He looked at Orson's missing limbs, then at my face. Aegis's drone hovered above the street and kept both of us on the citywide feed. Lucian ignored the drone. His eyes stayed on me. Irene's stolen prince, Lucian called me. I stepped over the broken beam. You killed civilians to make one wounded man stop running. That's your big revenge? Lucian's eyes darkened. My mother abandoned her children for you. I was an infant. You spent your life finding easier targets. His mouth tightened. Good. The abandoned general could cut buildings, but one sentence still reached him. He attacked. I caught his wrist. The street sank beneath both of us. His technique redirected my force into the ground, and the recoil hit my shoulder from below. I froze the broken pavement around his boots and drove my forehead into his face. Lucian let the hit move him half a step. Then he twisted my captured arm and sent the remaining impact through a parked truck. The truck folded behind me. I kicked his knee. He used my ankle as a pivot and threw the force toward Orson. The shock veered toward my mentor, so I released the hold. The problem was immediate. I had more raw power. Lucian knew how to turn power sideways. Orson groaned behind me. I needed him out before the next exchange. Red threads wrapped around Lucian's throat. Serena landed between us in her many-tailed form. Aegis drones arrived overhead and caught every mark, claw, and pale tail. Her secret was public now. Serena pulled Lucian backward. "Take Orson!" I lifted my mentor. Lucian saw Serena's red threads. Then he saw the silver pendant at her throat. His whole body stopped. "Naira!" Lucian said. Serena's grip loosened for one beat. Naira was the little girl Irene had sent toward the shelter. Naira was the sister Lucian had abandoned in the forest. Serena Maddox was Naira. Lucian stared at her tails. "You survived." Serena's face went cold. "You left me there." "The route burned," Lucian snapped. "I thought you died." Serena tightened the red threads until his armor cracked. "You never came back to check." Lucian looked past Serena at me carrying Orson, then back at her. "Mother chose him. Now you protect him too." Serena planted both feet. "Irene came back too late. You never came back at all." Lucian roared and tore one thread apart. Serena caught his other arm with 3 more. "Go, Cameron!" she shouted. I carried Orson away while she held her brother. 2 blocks later, Orson's body began turning gray in my arms. I lowered him beside a closed storefront. His severed wounds were already releasing ash. I pressed blue cold around them anyway. Orson touched my wrist. "Stop! I kept the frost there." "I got to you," I told him. Orson looked toward the red light above the buildings. "You reached the blade! The wounds came first." "I got there before the blade. I still got there too late." Orson's fingers tightened once around mine. "The dead leave responsibility," he told me. "The living can still change what happens next." His hand broke into ash. The rest followed before I could answer. The closest thing I had left to a father lifted from my arms in black dust. I set his frost-scarred cane beside the ash. Behind me, Serena's thread snapped across the street. Aegis engines were closing in. Their drones had already shown them what she was. I stood. Then I went back for Lucian. Serena and I went back for him together. We thought one clean hit would finish the fight. We were wrong about what that hit would cost. I returned to the same ruined street seconds after Orson turned to ash. Serena was still there, holding Lucian with 3 red threads while Aegis engines closed from both ends of the block. Her tails were spread. One arm trembled from the old poison. She looked at me once. "You're planning to charge him alone again?" I stepped beside her. Grief was supposed to make me wiser. Serena tightened the threads. "It didn't!" "Fair." My guardian, who did not care, had followed me into another family disaster. Lucian ripped one thread apart and rolled his shoulder. Orson's blood still marked his blade. I told him, "You die here." Lucian glanced toward the ash 2 blocks behind me. "You keep arriving after the important part." I moved before he finished. My fist hit his guard. He turned the force into the street. Concrete burst beneath Serena instead of beneath him. She vaulted the collapse, looped a thread around the light pole, and kicked Lucian across the jaw. He caught her ankle. I froze his wrist. Serena twisted free and cut 3 lines across his armor. Lucian backed through a parked sedan. He came out carrying the torn door. He threw it at Serena. I shattered the door in midair. The metal fragments kept moving because Lucian had already redirected my impact. Serena crossed her tails in front of her face. Shards bounced away from the pale fur. She glared at me. "Controlled power, remember?" I answered. "Excellent reminder. Terrible timing." Lucian attacked between us. My royal authority could open or seal the rift. Lucian had better technique. Serena and I had 2 directions, so we kept him between us and attacked from opposite angles. I attacked high. Serena pulled low. Lucian redirected my shoulder strike into her threads. The recoil tore a second car sideways. Serena released before the force reached her hands. Then she snapped a fresh line around his knee. I drove frost into the joint. Lucian dropped 1 inch. That was progress. The abandoned general had finally discovered gravity. He stabbed toward my throat. I leaned aside and trapped the blade beneath one arm. Serena wrapped both wrists. For half a second, we had him. Lucian stamped through the street and sent the impact up Serena's threads. The lines whipped her off her feet. I caught her around the waist before she hit a wall. Serena's tails folded around us, blocking Lucian's follow-up slash. We landed together. She pushed off my chest. "Eyes up, Prince," I told her. "You were blocking the view." Serena's cheeks flashed red despite the battlefield. Then she threw me at her brother. Apparently Serena flirted by throwing me at her brother. I crossed the gap like a projectile and drove both feet into Lucian's chest. His armor cracked across the same lines Serena had cut. Aegis trucks reached the block. Corinne Ashby stepped out first with her guitar weapon open. Agents spread behind her and raised rifles. Their sights moved from Lucian to Serena's tails. Kira stood behind a damaged gauntlet. Even the walking flirt alarm forgot to speak. Serena saw the rifles. Her mouth tightened. Lucian saw them too. "There," he told her. The humans finally noticed what you are. Serena pulled hard enough to split another plate on his chest. They noticed me helping. Try it sometime. One Aegis rifle shifted toward her head. Corinne knocked the barrel down with the side of her guitar weapon. Hold your target. Every rifle stayed on Lucian after that. Serena tightened her grip and the agents let her. Lucian tore the light pole from the sidewalk and swung it through Serena's threads. I caught the pole. He released it and drove his palm into my chest. The force should have thrown me backward. I planted both feet and let blue frostfire swallow his arm. Lucian's armor whitened. Serena attacked from behind. He turned toward the movement. That was what we wanted. Serena sent 2 threads past his face. Lucian tilted away from them. The threads hooked the broken traffic light behind him and yanked it down. He raised one arm to block the falling steel. Serena snapped 3 tails across his eyes. Lucian slashed blindly. I stepped inside the blade. Blue fire wrapped my hand. I drove it through the crack Serena had opened in his armor. My hand punched through his chest plate and came out behind him in a burst of black ash. Lucian stopped. Serena held both his arms. Every Aegis rifle stayed fixed on us. An agent near Corinne whispered, "They got him." Corinne lowered her guitar weapon half an inch. We had finally landed the clean hit. What happened next taught me the missing rule. Direct skin contact, let another person channel royal authority. Then Lucian smiled. The man had a hole through his armor and looked pleased. Look, nobody that cooked should look that happy. His hand closed around my bare wrist. Direct contact. The blue fire reversed direction. Royal authority ripped out of my arm and poured into Lucian. I tried to pull free. His fingers locked around the bone. Serena's threads cut into his shoulder, but Lucian held on. She drove her claws into his back. A blast of royal pressure threw her across the street. Serena hooked one tail around a traffic light and stopped inches above the pavement. Lucian leaned close. The key was never something you carried, it was always you. A red line opened in the sky. The rift answered the power leaving my body. The measured pull exposed the plan. Lucian had taken the wound for one grip, and he fed the rift in controlled bursts. My vision narrowed. Dark chains flashed around my heart, the same chains Irene had broken. I heard Orson ordering me to control the release. Then I saw Serena trying to stand beneath the red sky. Lucian had killed Orson to draw me in. He had baited Serena with their family and grabbed me through the opening. Now he was draining the control Orson had taught me. So I opened every limit Orson had taught me to control. Blue frostfire erupted from my skin and flooded Lucian's arm. His smile died. Cracks raced over his armor. He tried to release me. I grabbed him back. You wanted the key, I told him. Take all of it. Power tore through both of us. Lucian's knees hit the street. The windows still standing across the block exploded. His black armor split at the shoulders. Blue light poured from the gaps. For one savage second, I thought I had turned his trap against him. Then the red line above the city split from horizon to horizon. The rift opened. A black sky appeared behind our sky. Thousands of shapes crowded the opening. Later, I learned the same rupture lit King Varric's throne hall. The stolen crowned king gave one order: invade Earth. Demons began falling into the city. One crashed through an apartment roof. Another landed on a bus and tore into the passengers before Aegis reached it. A winged creature grabbed a man from the sidewalk and carried him above traffic. The man fell before I could reach him. Aegis receivers changed to full breach protocol. Director Kerr ordered every available team into the streets. The agency had prepared for this for more than a decade. Armored shutters opened across its lower floors. Drones lifted from the roof. Emergency weapons rolled into the avenues. None of it slowed the creatures falling through the rift. Lucian released my wrist and vanished behind falling stone and blue fire. I started after him. Then Serena gasped. The rift surge hit every demon body on the block. The old poison bruise on her arm turned black again. Her tails flickered. Her knees folded. I caught her before her head struck the pavement. A demon dropped behind a family trapped beside an overturned car. Lucian was one target. The city had thousands of people who could not fight. I froze the demon, tore the car door away and shoved the family toward Aegis. Another creature landed between Corinne and 3 civilians. Serena tried to lift one hand. Nothing happened. I crossed the street, broke the creature's jaw with one hit and threw it beneath an Aegis truck. The civilians ran. Then I lifted Serena. Her breathing was shallow. Ash gathered around the wound on her side as her body tried to heal. Corinne looked at Serena, then at the sky. My power had opened. Nobody raised a weapon at us now. Above the city, demons kept falling through the rift. So I carried Serena home while the private revenge fight became a war. During the invasion, I carried Serena back to her fortified house. A black Aegis truck turned onto the block before I got her through the door. The rift surge had reopened the poison in her body, and her healing kept breaking into gray ash. Her pulse skipped twice before I reached the bedroom. I laid her on the bed, sealed the steel shutters, and checked the black bruise climbing her arm. Serena opened her eyes once. "Lucian? Alive," I told her. Her fingers caught my sleeve. "Don't fight him alone," I told her. You can threaten me after you stop turning gray. She tried to glare. The effort lasted 1 second. I ran 5 steps into the hall for the first aid kit. Metal snapped behind me. When I came back, a guitar cable hung through the split bedroom frame. Corinne Ashby was inside. Her guitar blade hovered above Serena's throat. The purple-haired executioner had broken into my home to finish the ally she had watched save Aegis agents. She had chosen the wrong target in the worst possible room. Corinne kept her eyes on Serena. "Move, Avery. I placed the first aid kit on the floor. You came alone," Corinne answered. "I don't need a squad for one wounded demon." I stepped between the blade and the bed. Corinne's cable tightened. "She turns to ash when she heals." "You know what that means," I answered. "It means she's alive." Corinne raised the point toward my chest. "Aegis exists to kill things like her." I rolled up my sleeve. Dark marks spread across my arm. Blue frostfire curled around my fingers. Corinne's weapon stopped. I told her, "Then you missed one." Her eyes moved from the marks to my face. The cable loosened 1 inch. I told her, "I'm half demon. The power opening that rift belongs to me." Corinne's grip tightened again. "Director Kerr knows?" I answered. "He knows I get results." She glanced at Serena. "You hit a demon inside Aegis." I stepped closer to the blade. Aegis kept Eddie's dead body for research. "Save the purity speech." Corinne's jaw locked. The blade stayed where it was. I pointed through the shuttered window toward the screaming city. "You can kill Serena and make me your next enemy. Or you can let me keep killing the demons invading your streets." Corinne asked, "Is that a threat?" I told her, "It's your choice. Pick a side, human." The room stayed quiet except for Serena's breathing. The woman who once fired live rounds at me now held her blade perfectly still. Corinne looked at the ash beside Serena's wound. Then she looked at the blue fire around my hand. Her blade lowered. "Truce until the rift closes," she told me. I picked up the first aid kit. "Good. Try not to shoot the patient." Corinne folded the weapon against her shoulder. "Try not to open another world." Look, I had earned that one. I cleaned Serena's wound and wrapped the poisoned arm. The ash slowed. Her breathing steadied enough for me to move her behind the inner steel door. Corinne stepped away from the bed without taking her eyes off Serena. I locked the inner room and faced her. "If that door opens before I return, I come for you first." Corinne checked the cable on her weapon. "Go save the city, Prince." The title came out sharp. The weapon stayed lowered. Minutes later, I returned to the invasion. The intersection outside Aegis Command was buried under wrecked cars and falling demons. Corinne reached it from the opposite side, firing cable rounds through a creature's wings. An Aegis agent dragged 2 civilians toward the lobby. A horned demon cut him off. Corinne shot its knee and pulled the civilians clear. A second creature landed behind her and bit into her forearm. She drove the guitar blade through its chest and tore free, but the bite weakened her grip. 2 more closed before she could reset. I landed between them and released 1 ring of blue frostfire. Both demons froze. I shattered one and drove the other through a concrete barrier. Corinne pulled her bitten arm against her chest. I looked at the frozen bodies. "Second rescue. Your evaluation score is getting embarrassing." Corinne reloaded the guitar weapon. "I had them," I answered. "Naturally." Then gray ash slipped from beneath her glove. The bite marks were closing. Human skin should have bled. Corinne's wound healed the way a demon's body healed. She stared at the ash on her palm. The certainty left her face first. Then the anger arrived. I had seen Dr. Oren Mallory inject her inside Aegis's hidden lab. Corinne only knew him as the doctor behind her performance treatments. She peeled the glove away and watched another layer of skin close beneath gray dust. "How long?" Corinne asked. I told her, "Mallory raised your dose before the city breach." Corinne looked at Aegis headquarters as if the glass tower had personally lied to her. Corinne asked, "What did Mallory put in me?" I answered, "Ask him with the needle in your hand." Corinne closed her fist around the ash and walked toward Aegis. While Corinne headed for Mallory, Bluewing recovered a broken recording from another street near the rift. The serpent scout who had poisoned Serena approached Lucian through the smoke. Lucian's armor was split from our attack, but he remained standing. The scout bowed and bragged that the Bluewing woman had nearly died from its venom. Lucian turned slowly. The scout raised its head. "The many-tailed one. I left enough poison to stop her heart." Lucian crossed the distance before it finished smiling. His hand punched through the scout's chest. The creature looked down at his arm, then back at his face. Lucian reduced it to ash and walked away. The abandoned general kept claiming humans and demons deserved the same hatred. One boast about his sister, and his own soldier was gone. Sure, man. Completely detached. Back at Aegis, Corinne reached Dr. Mallory's hidden treatment room with demon ash on her arm. She reached his door with one question. What had he put in her? Corinne went straight from the invasion to Dr. Oren Mallory's hidden treatment room beneath Aegis Command. I learned the details later from the lab recording. Mallory was the enhancement doctor who had secretly increased her performance doses. He had another loaded syringe waiting on a steel tray. Corinne picked it up and pressed the needle beneath his jaw. "Use it on yourself," she told him. Mallory's hands rose. That dosage isn't safe for me. Corinne pushed the needle closer. Interesting answer. What's in it? Mallory used the calm doctor voice while sweat darkened his collar. A recovery compound, Mallory told her. You authorized treatment. Corinne opened her bitten forearm. Gray ash rolled from skin that had already closed. She rubbed the ash across his white coat. Does recovery usually turn people into this? Mallory looked at the door. Corinne clicked the plunger once. A clear drop gathered at the tip. Lie again, she warned, and you can demonstrate the side effects. Mallory folded. Demon DNA, he admitted. Selected elite agents received it. None of you were told the source. His eyes flicked to the syringe. Corinne turned it until the clear fluid caught the lab light. Corinne's eyes dropped to the ash on her arm. Aegis had let her hunt demons with demon blood under her skin. Her grip tightened until Mallory winced. Behind Mallory, glass tanks glowed through the concealed door. Corinne pulled the syringe away. Mallory exhaled too early. Then she marched him into the captive lab. Living demons floated in glass tanks and crouched behind reinforced cages. One captive lifted its head when Mallory entered. Another pulled at its restraints until the glass rattled. Clear lines ran from several tanks into the same treatment equipment Mallory used on agents. Aegis had drained living captives to alter its own fighters. Mallory reached for the security panel. Corinne caught his wrist and used his hand to unlock the releases. One cage opened. A thin creature crawled onto the floor and smelled the blood on Mallory's coat. Mallory called it by a specimen number and ordered it back. The creature kept walking. A second captive pressed against its door when it saw him. Corinne released that lock too. Then a third. By the third lock, Mallory stopped using specimen numbers and started using Corinne's name. With every open cage, Mallory's voice climbed. Mallory finally dropped the professional tone. Corinne, listen to me. We're human. I made you strong enough to protect our people. The doctor discovered human solidarity the second his captives looked at him. Corinne stepped toward the exit. You used their bodies on mine. Now answer to them. Mallory ran after her. A clawed hand caught his coat. He grabbed Corinne's sleeve. You need me. I can remove it. Corinne looked at the ash healing her arm. You didn't ask before putting it in. She pulled free. The captive creatures dragged Mallory down before he reached the door. They began feeding before Corinne reached the outer lock. His orders stopped sounding like orders. Corinne closed the outer lock and kept walking. Later that night, after leaving the lab, Corinne returned to Serena's bedroom. Serena told me about that conversation afterward. Corinne had changed Serena's bandage before she woke. Fresh gray ash marked Corinne's sleeve. Serena noticed it and said nothing. The guitar weapon rested across Corinne's knees, and her chair blocked the door. The room still smelled like antiseptic and smoke from the open rift. Serena looked at the weapon, then at the woman who had tried to kill her. Planning to finish the job? Corinne watched the hallway. Cameron keeps fighting while you're safe, so stay safe. Serena tried to sit up and failed. Corinne pushed a glass of water within reach. Save the pride. The city needs him more than it needs this argument. Serena took the glass. That almost sounded caring, Corinne answered. It was strategic. My guardian who did not care had acquired a bodyguard who also did not care. You see the problem, 2 armed women, 1 house, and 0 emotional honesty. Corinne stayed in the chair and guarded the door. Outside, the rift still poured demons into the city, so while Corinne guarded Serena, I fought beneath the broken sky. A horned demon charged through a line of civilians. I froze its legs, tore it away from them, and shattered it against the street. 2 winged creatures dropped behind me. I burned one from the air and drove the other through a wrecked bus. An Aegis agent fell beneath a clawed giant. I caught the claw, broke the arm, and pulled the agent free. The agent saw the marks across my face. He still took my hand. More demons replaced them before the ash cleared. The former school punching bag was now cutting a path through an invading army. That upgrade came with a city-sized bill. Humans had feared me. Demons had hunted me. I chose the people behind me. If killing every invader between them and safety was the only way to protect them, then that was what I would do.